Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. My name is Dan Shelley, a professional paintball photographer, and in this episode, I sit down with the professional paintball player, Joe Barrett of the #1 team in the world of all time, San Diego Dynasty. Joe recently just got done playing his very first event with his brand new team in Tampa Bay and had some absolutely iconic moments. And in this episode, Joe talks about how he manifested those moments and how he thought about those moments way before even stepping foot at the event. He also opened up about the hard road that he's had his whole entire life and everything he's had to go through to become a professional paintball player. This is definitely an episode you're not going to want to miss, so let's jump right into it.
Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where I have a fellow podcast host and one of the newest members of one of the greatest, if not the greatest paintball team in sports history, Joe Barrett. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, what's up, my friend? It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's man, it's been so cool, like just seeing our relationship since you started on the team. You know, I think a lot of people look at professional players in paintball as like untouchable. And you and I were just going back and forth on DMs, you know, essentially from the moment you joined the team. And you're just such like an open guy. Like you talk to anybody and you look to people like they're just people. That's such a cool thing for you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. You know, I really enjoyed our like, I don't know, hour-long conversation outside of like the Field 1 booth area. We got into some pretty cool, deep, fun topics, but yeah, I think it's important to be open with everyone and also meet people at their level. Not that like anybody is like above or below anybody, but what I mean is like you talk to somebody like at the spot in life that they are at and want to talk to, you know what I mean? You don't like try to meet them as if you're the same thing because you're probably both doing different things, but like I've always been like pretty down to earth. And I think a lot of that came from, you know, when I was a kid, a lot of those pros were different, you know, it's not like they weren't good guys, but that was definitely like the, you know, the tough man's man generation of paintball. And a lot of those guys, whether it's because they were just too busy or whatever it was, they didn't really give you the time of day oftentimes. And I remember thinking it so many times in my head as I came up from Division 3 to, you know, all the way to, I was like, man, when I make it up there, I'm going to be the coolest fucking pro. Like, I don't know if I am, by the way, but in my head, I was just like, if kids stop me and want to talk to me, I'm not just going to turn like ready to sign the autograph. I'm going to be like, well, what's good? Yeah. Tell me about your games today. And I'm just going to like talk to them, you know?
Yeah. I love that so much, and I definitely want to dive further into that because I've got some thoughts around that. Before we do that, though, I've got two show sponsors that I want to give a huge shout out to that you are very familiar with now. BFP Gear has been with me since day one from this, and gosh, there's just, I wish we had more people like Junior and Gina in paintball. They are just, they're family. You know, they'll take you in like family, and they will do anything for you. And it's so cool. Like I'll get a call from Junior every few weeks and he'll, you know, talk about the show and he'll ask questions about it. And like, he gets just as excited as the shows for I am. And so it's cool that you're part of that circle now too, having Junior and Gina in your corner with BFP Gear. And then secondly, Hormesis, you know, they're like, there's nothing to say about Hormesis. They're just incredible. They're on a league of their own. I've been wearing my own personal headband since I started this photography journey. And like it's faded so nicely now, but I did just pick this one up a few weeks ago. This is the Link series from the arcade series they just did a few drops ago.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I actually might start wearing that. Cause I miss like that first feeling of putting on a brand new Hormesis headband. There's nothing like it, but so I want to dive back into what you had just talked about, because that was one of the things I wanted to bring up early on is So if we go back to Tampa, the Thursday is like a practice day for pros, and it's like a lot of registration days for a lot of players. There's not a lot going on. And that was the first time you and I had ever met in person. And like you said, we talked for a solid 45 minutes or an hour. And what I loved about that is like you turned your shoulders square to myself and my wife, Amanda, and like you just talked to us like you knew us, like you were just friends with us forever. And that is such an experience that I don't think many people do. They're like they're distracted all the time. They're looking at other things that pass by, but you are so in tune into that conversation. And I respect you so much for that.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And it's funny that, even beyond the chat, you picked up on like little things like, just squaring with people to show them that you're fully present. It's funny because that event, I wanted to be like really hyper focused, and I'm not like a social battery guy, but I do know that like if I stop and chat with everybody who stops me along the way, I'm going to be like putting my energy spread a little too thin kind of in everything in the event. And like an event encapsulates so much. There's so much to do. You don't want to just be there to play. Like you want to connect with the friends that you see 5 times a year, and talk to the divisional kid that really wants to meet you, and all of that on top of like playing and scouting and stretching and whatever. And in my head, I wanted to be hyper focused and like, maybe give a little less time to things that are outside of the bubble of my teammates and coaches. But you, for some reason, it seemed like you were like in the team. It was my perception of it the whole time. Like you, a couple Champs Club guys, I just felt like you were part of it because you were there like pretty much the whole time. So it's like, why not meet you and like become like as good of friends as I can in a very quick matter of time. I know we're going to be spending a lot of time together because I intend on being with Dynasty till I retire. So everybody around this circle right now is going to be treated like family to me because that was how they treated me when I came in. They introduce you to their wives and their kids and this and that. So it was my full attention because the way I saw it was like you were inner circle, and I like to really meet people.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a beautiful answer. And I think what you said there is exactly what encapsulates Dynasty is when you're in that family, or they take you in, like you become family. There's no question. It's either your family or you're not. And you see that from everyone that's involved in the pits. You see it from the wives of the players, of the fans of the pit, crew members, like everyone is it's a huge family. And it's such a cool atmosphere to be around.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time in that conversation talking about manifesting, which is mind blowing because of the weekend that you had. So talk to me about like what manifesting means to you, because we went in length about it. And then I want to follow that up with going into how that tied into the success you had that weekend.
I really enjoyed that conversation. I like talking about manifesting. I like looking at the world beyond just the solid world that we can see. I remember when I used to look at the world differently and think like, okay, I'm looking at examples of what is happening, so this is the only thing that can happen. And I don't know exactly when it happened, but there was like a change in my life where I thought very deeply and was like, okay, so the things that happen in your external environment, like in reality is very real, but it's perceived through your eyes, and then like you picture it in your mind. And when you dream about something, you're just picturing something in your mind. So I like kind of found this parallel where it's like, what is the difference between what's outside of my skull and what's inside of my skull? You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like,
yeah,
I wish I could word that better, but I think this is like the simple layman's term that anyone can understand of like, what you're seeing out there is only seen. It's only there because it's processed in your mind. And so when your mind thinks about something, whether you're daydreaming about what you could be in the future or whatever, like who's to say that that isn't just as real? And
Yeah.
that is what manifesting is to me. Like I've heard it described other ways, and I know it can be defined in other ways. But to me, it's like, okay, if you can see it in your mind, if you can really visualize it happening for you and to you, and not just like see the end result of it, but like live what that feeling would be. Like, what would that actually feel like if it was happening? I think that is how you begin manifesting something to happen for you. And then the hard part is you don't just, you know, it's not like it's such a hippie juju thing where you just manifest a brand new field one force and it appears in your hand.
Yeah.
It's like you have to picture what it would be like to have or have done that thing, and you have to feel the emotion and energy behind like stepping into it. Like if you want to win something, it's like you got to just like not pretend, but you have to start acting like a winner would, and
Yeah.
it will draw those things in, almost more like law of attraction. But once you're doing that, you now have to also put into action what a winner would do, right?
Yeah.
You don't just sit there and go, yeah, I'm a winner, and then just do nothing, and then you're not going to like appear on the main stage with the win, right? No, like now it's like, well, what would a winner do? And then you have to go through all those steps, or like trust the process. Like if you only manifest it in your mind without making any action, it's a dream. But once you start doing and like planning and putting actions towards that dream that you're seeing and feeling, that's how you manifest the event or whatever it is to happen.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much. I think when you were trying to explain that, I read it somewhere before, and I think somebody called like your mind's eye is like where it kind of connects what you physically see versus like what your mind sees and perceives.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I th- I've done a lot of thinking about manifesting because when I did that children's book a few years ago, like I had this big plan of it launching at World Cup, and I would just visualize so much of that moment of like seeing myself in the Dynasty booth, being there. What am I wearing? What are the conversations I'm having with people? What does it look like? The whole, like I could literally tell you every single thing that I saw when I was thinking about it. And then of course, when that moment finally happens, it's like, holy shit, like this is crazy. Like I thought about all this and it's all here. To tie back to what you said though, I think if you manifest something and you want it so bad and so deeply that you have to start embody that and you have to live it. And what that does, I think that like psychologically it makes you work backwards and set small goals of how can I get there.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate with you?
It does, 100%. And I don't think it's always working backwards. I think once you get to a certain age or like an ability to critically think, you start doing it that way. But I think early on, like when you're young and you have a dream, you don't know like necessarily the steps of working backwards. Like let's say you're trying to go pro in paintball. You know that, okay, to be pro, I have to get to semi-pro. Probably have to play at least, a couple seasons there, win beyond like the center court, like, show that I'm like relevant and really sticking around so that a pro team eventually goes, okay, I keep seeing that kid be a standout on his semi-pro team on this center field on Sunday. And they're damn good. Like we should probably give this person a tryout or consider them if they try out for us, or the other way, your team just wins and you move up. Right. And then before you're like, all right, well, they get to semi-pro, I should win D2. I should win D3. I should go through the steps properly and really like try to learn every lesson in the book along the way. Right. Like you can't just skip addition and think you're going to go right to, business calc 2. Like if you don't know addition first, how are you going to do long division and, cosine, sine, all of that shit. And then eventually calculus. So like you can start to see it that way, but you don't really there's not always like this easy roadmap of like, okay, well, what do I do to get that division? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oliver talked about that in his episode where he was like, you can manifest something, and whether that comes true or not, it's almost the journey to get there will unlock something completely different, as well as potentially with what you're manifesting. And how they tie together. It's just a beautiful connection.
Yeah. And the journey to get there is the best and the worst part, right? I've
Yeah.
learned this on a few good things I've manifested is like, it's not like you're trying to manifest a ham sandwich here, right? Where it's like you manifest you eating in your mind, the taste of it. You go to the fridge, you make it in 1 minute, right? If you're trying to manifest really good things to happen to you in life, you can manifest them, but it's normally not going to happen like on the timeline that you think it's going to happen. And sometimes it
Yeah.
happens quicker. Like, you know, your reality manifested quicker than you probably would have imagined it would, you know, in like a less than 2 years flat. But like for me, you know, I had seen guys kind of not in my own generation, but guys that started around the same time, like these Dynasty guys, go right to the top of pro very quickly as like 14, 15-year-old kids. But, you know, I came out of like a lousy area of Buffalo, New York, which is a lousy area for paintball, near nothing and no national teams and almost no pro teams at the time. And so no matter how bad I want it or how bad I work, if you're just like the best gunfighter of all time, but you're doing it in an open cornfield in the dead center of the country and no one sees you and goes, whoa, that guy is good, we should bring him on our team and work his way up, it's going to take a lot longer, right? So my manifestation of pro paintball took me 12 years till I went pro the first time in NPPL. And then
Wow.
that died. And I was like, holy shit, back down to semi-pro. This is going to be maybe a while. And then sure enough, it was a while before I made it back into pro in X-Ball, in the NXL. And so back to the point, the hard part is while you're manifesting, I think so many people, they think like, damn it, I haven't made this happen for me. And they just give up and they go to the next thing. But
Yeah.
like, you have to have like the patience and the commitment and the dedication and like the mental resolve to keep reminding yourself over and over and over and over and over that this is going to happen, but it's going to happen when I'm ready. And the universe plays no favorites. Like it's not just gonna like you know, pick the I don't know, the guy who doesn't put in any effort and go, yeah, you really want this bad, so you're gonna be right on the top team. Like, no, it'll give it to you, but you better check all the boxes looking for. It's like, do you work harder than everyone? Are you physically ready? Are you mentally ready? Are you focused? Do you have all your ducks in a row? And when you have all those, and like you have basically said in every possible way after looking in your mirror, I'm ready for this. I have that. I have that. I have that. Then the universe finally manifests or like it manifests it for you because it's like, and all right, we accept you. Here it is.
And now you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost sounds like when you're going through that process, there's also you yourself need to have self-confidence in that readiness to be on that stage or whatever it is. And if one of those boxes isn't checked, then there's something that you're still lacking that you've got to go chase and figure out.
Yes. Well, that's kind of the man. I could divert into so many little rabbit holes out of that 1 minute sentence I said, because that part right there would be like what I summed up in if you've been looking yourself in the mirror, right?
Right.
That's the important thing that a lot of people, they're not good at being introspective and also critically thinking, especially at the same time. Like, it's not like I would call anybody out for it. And if you're a pro, you're probably good at this. But I'd say more than half of people are not good at actually being introspective. And I know that because you can see when someone is guarded and not fully doing it because there's a little bit of ego holding them back. And I know this because I was that guy for so long, you know, like for a long time, I guess, until I went pro, there was like all these things that I would like excuse myself on, or like it would be looking me in the mirror, like right there where it's like, but there's this thing, but like you try to like, there's no one watching. It's just you in your mind, but you would tuck it away to the corner and like lie to yourself and be like, no. That's not important enough. But, I think if you do the work, like if you go through certain really mentally tasking things or ceremonies, or there's all these ways in this reality now that you can like do the mental work, and you can go, you know what, I am going to just stand there and face myself, and there's those things that are ugly about me or are embarrassing or destroy my confidence, and rather than just like hiding them, which other people outside of you will probably notice, I'm just going to finally face this fucking thing and work on it or kill it or get rid of it or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm the same way as you. Is for the longest time, like I was shut down, like everything. You'd ask me, hey, how was your day? And like, it's fine. I'd be crumbled inside, but like, I wouldn't tell you that. And what unlocked that for me was my wife, Amanda, is doing just some of the most amazing life work right now. Like she is literally journaling almost an hour plus a day, just working through so much stuff. And she manifested like, hey, I'm gonna have this physique, I'm gonna do these things, and here we are a month or two later, and like she's in the gym regularly, she's got this crazy diet that she's sticking to, and it's like, wow, like you're bringing that to life. And like seeing somebody so close to me go through that, it was so inspiring for me, like, wow, I can do that too. And like it's helped me kind of change my life. And I say that because it creates that team mentality, right? Like you're going through this as an individual, but now that you're on a team where you've got a lot of players in Dynasty who are very open to conversations, like I could see what you're doing starting to spill through to the other players on the team, and them taking some of what you're going through and what you've learned.
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't think it was necessarily. I have brought that to teams. I do like to create the more open dialogue conversation, and you talk a lot about vulnerability. I understand that when you're vulnerable, it's something in the other person's brain allows them to like be vulnerable and open up a little more too. So
Yeah.
when I've went to a lot of different teams, no matter how like tough and gritty the guys are, sometimes I'll just say things that are a little bit more like, hey, this is me, and see if they give their real shit back. And also I'll always be the first person who comes off the field and goes, guys, you were doing fine over there, I fucked us that point. Like, and when you claim accountability, like that's vulnerable too, right? Because now you're stepping right into it and going, I fucked up. You're putting the spotlight on you, like not in a good way, but in a bad way. And you're letting other people know. And sometimes when you do this around the wrong crowd, especially like in your younger divisional days, if you say you fucked up, people, rather than just going, oh, okay, thank you for admitting it, they turn and they start motherfucking you, right?
They attack it.
Yeah, you did. Why would you do that? Like, even though you're saying, I get it, I won't do it again. They're just like the questioning, the anger, the judgment, the pointing. But, I found that it's funny. Like, not only do the skill sets get better as you climb the ranks, but there's at every level, there's more mentality towards like having no ego and being accountable, like self-accountable. And on Dynasty, everyone's like that. So that's where I was going with this. And like, I think a big reason Dynasty is so great is because even the guys like, the horsemen on the team, who are arguably the smartest players to ever play the game, when they mess up, they'll be the first to say it. Whereas I've been on other teams before where everybody on those teams are damn good, but like almost no one ever goes, no, that was me. Or like, hey man, what did you think? Could you tell me it? Instead, everybody just kind of like almost feels like, well, we're all really good, which everyone is. We're all pros. So like, I know what I did there in my head. I'll just fix it. You know what I mean? I don't want to like call attention to the fact that I'm having a really rough day.
Yeah, I think someone called that suffering in silence, right? Like you don't share that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I think some people would almost see the opposite of it is, you had mentioned like when you got to the pro ranks is when you almost reached your like peak vulnerability and when you start to like open up more and have those things. And I think a lot of people would think that's the opposite. When you get to that level, you feel like, well, now I'm elite. Like I don't need to do these things. Like now my natural gift is going to come out. And I think that's where a lot of pros stunt their career is when they have that thought process. So it's cool to see that you unlock that in you, and now you're seeing your game just elevate even more.
Yeah, it's so true. It's just like the pros who busted their ass and worked really hard and grinded every weekend, both days, and drilled extra and all these things in semi-pro and then made pro, and then they stopped doing those things. And
Yeah.
it's like you did all that to get here. So if you do less, how do you think you're going to fare up here? If anything, you should be doing more.
More,
And
right.
and in terms of like communication and like the psychological aspect, it is at the tippy top peak once you enter into pro, especially into like the top six-ish team echelon of pro. That is where like there can be zero room for bullshit just for your ego. Like if you're just
Yeah.
like lying to people to hide because you're scared of saying that you are having a rough practice day, well, now you're hurting the team because then for some reason in your head, you still think you deserve reps when you should have just been like man enough to have a conversation with someone and be ready to face yeah, man, sorry, this isn't your layout. You're probably not going to play this event. But
Yeah.
I like literally visibly watch people avoid that and things like that. Cause like I'm very observant when I'm around the team environment. Because weirdly I've been thrown into like the team leader position in a lot of teams and I've played on like 100 teams now. So in watching like 1,000 different teammates, I can always tell the person who is brave enough to step up to like me or the captain or the coach and go like, sit me, I am not playing well, or the guy who just wants his play time and he'd rather play because he paid or because he's part of the team or whatever, whiny baby stuff, over sit and watch his team win. And when you look around and see all that, there's like those things that'll almost immediately, I'm not going to say check you out, but like they will make you get that little bit less belief that you're going to win, right? Because you're like, fuck, we are not all bought in the same way. There are 10 guys here, and 2 of them think that they are playing sweet when they have barely won a point all weekend. And that is going to seep into the tournament because I know that guy is either going to stand there expecting to play or he's going to be a mopey statue in the pit. And that energy is going to bleed into the pits. And
Totally.
all these things are like synced because like reality is actually completely interconnected and we see things as separatists. But if you know anything about like the way atoms work, like when you're standing next to somebody by the end of like a half hour, 45 minutes, a lot of them is literally in you and a lot of you is in them, like at the physical, like microscopic molecular level. So it's all connected. And when you see like these little things happen because somebody is making like a dumb mental ego decision to avoid the truth or like the solution, then I just see how it like spider webs through everything else and leaves like these little toxic corners of, your pit for the most part, everything's good, right? It's like if it's an aquarium, it's mostly clean water, but
Yeah.
people's shit are like little bits by bits, like a chemical leak spilling into the sides. And when there's too much of it, it's like the whole quarter corner of your aquarium is starting to get really weird. And like your team is really talented, so you're still like winning points and winning like half or more of your matches, but with that much toxic like cancer like grabbing onto the whole, it's not going to win the tournament. It never wins the tournament unless
It
it's
just
like
spreads.
pure and clean.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. And you see so many teams, go through that. And it's a cool spot being a photographer because like I bounce around to all the different pits. And like Maddie talked about it recently where he's like, I walked up to that paintball fit in Tampa. I was like, hey guys, have a good luck. And he was like, I just felt it. Like they were all like, yep, we got this. And he was like, oh, like there's something different in that aura, that energy that they're putting out. And you could just tell, you could just see, you can like like you're saying, the atoms, you can feel that energy, how different players are putting it off, whether they're nervous, they're tense, they come off a point, how do they handle themselves? And you can just watch everyone around them, like they're watching that, and then they feel that energy, and then they become more tense or whatever it is too. So there's for sure a science to it.
Yep. And you know what's cool and interesting and a fun example with Fit specifically is what we just talked about there ties back into the doing everything that the universe demands in order to manifest the thing to happen, because Paintball Fit deserved that win so much. Like there's nothing anybody can do to take it away from them. They were going to win that match almost no matter what, because we as Dynasty also played lights out, and we had a lot of things go our way because like everybody believes so hard and the Dynasty magic works. And we would come back against teams because we believed we could, and they thought it was already in the bag, and they kind of stopped playing their ball or like asserting their will, or they just thought it was going to be easy and they were going to just sit back and hold us. Like there's all these reasons that we won matches and got that far, right? But in the end, we all believed we were going to win, right?
Yeah.
But they, I think, could believe more, because in their head, as much as we all go, we put in the work, we did everything we had to do as far as like, you know, Dynasty is definitely more quality than quantity. So they think deeply about the game and maybe play less points at practice, but we pull a lot away from it, right? But in our minds, we did all the work that was necessary. In their minds, they did all the work plus probably, I don't know, 200 more points or 1,000 more breakout drills or whatever those extra first few days of that week when the layout comes out. I mean, these guys are a family that own a paintball field and live at it. So the level of confidence that must come with that, like, is amazing, because in their heads, there's not even a single thought that sweeps by that goes, oh, maybe that team did a little more work from us. Like they could even look at Russian Legion and go, I think we did more than them. So, you know, sometimes that team will still lose the tournament, right? But it's certainly not going to lose because of a lack of confidence or a lack of doing the work. And the universe plays no favorites, right? So it rewarded the team that outworked the other team, which they for sure did.
Which is also when everybody wrote them off when Colt went down on Thursday.
Yeah.
And that just ignited them even more. Like you almost didn't see, I'm sure some people did, but like you didn't see any panic in them. And Colt immediately turned into that, well, now I'm going to do my job and my part, and I'm going to help out in the pits and where I can. And it was so cool to see. Like I had one of my good friends this weekend at USXBL. They played their first tournament in the elite division, which is, I think, D3. The very first point of the event, he was dealing with a knee injury. Very first point of the event, he said he felt it pop and he was done the rest of the event. And he's like a staple in this team. And, you know, he kind of beat himself a little bit up for it, but then you saw that switch. He's like, all right, how can I turn and now help my guys? And he became that positive energy. And it was so cool. Like he called the team meeting right before the next match. He's like, hey guys, come over. Let's talk about this. Like, here's what we need to do. Here's how I'm going to support you. And then you saw everybody almost not feel bad for him. It's like, okay, cool. We've got his support. Let's go do our jobs now.
Yep.
And it's just the power of those moments where it could seep in and ruin the whole entire day, or you could use it for different energy.
Yeah. It's the power of energy, right? Because even if he himself is fully bought in, but the guys, every time one of them looks at him, he's just like, man, I know how hard he worked. I feel bad for him. He should be out here. Yeah. It's like, great, you're pitying your buddy, but like you've taken the attention and the focus away from the thing. Like that shit is already done. There's nothing you can do about it. He seems to be bought in already, right? Yeah. So like stop like thinking, man, I wanted to win this one with him, and just think about, okay, what is the new situation we're in now? What is our new reality? We have to commit and see that happening.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, let's transition to further on in that weekend with Tampa. You had some of like the wildest moments I've ever seen. You know, and I think I've seen it over the past few years. I've been around the team quite a bit. When newer players come on, they don't get as many reps. You know, they're kind of quiet. They almost have this like, I stand in the back mentality, and you instantly became like a leader on that team, and almost like people were looking to you as you were having those incredible moments. Talk to me about what that experience was like.
Yeah. First of all, that shit was psychedelic, actually. For
Crazy.
to like, it's so weird. It's almost like this, like, it's like a you step into this different realm when you're in the paintball focus bubble or whatever it is at the highest level. Because like when you look around at people's eyes in a tight moment and you only have like 45 seconds to get out there, like 45 seconds isn't a long time, but at our level, it seems like we can slow time down. And I have long enough to fully look way deep into someone's eyes. It's not like just panning by him. It's like a full, like you really connect. And I have time to do it with everybody and see if like we're all checked in. And I've been in a million huddles where everyone isn't checked in. I've been in some where everyone is, you know, whether we win or lose or not, whatever. But in the Dynasty huddle, it was interesting to look around and like realize, okay, everyone wants this, but I don't think anybody's going to say it right now. And then I would just say it for certain things. And everyone would just give you like that, like hungry, determined nod. And it's like, okay, cool. We all bought in. And when I'd play, you're not thinking about it, right? You're kind of in the flow state. But afterwards, like when I'm like, just, I don't know, kind of in the back of the rental car on the way home, I would think back and be like, holy shit, that was so weird, because I've had to do that for countless teams now. And normally it's guys that are, you know, on my level or like a lesser player than me. And they're looking towards a leader and a captain. But for some reason, I just like said some shit or like pulled back a thing. And when I look around, like the guys next to me are Alex Frage, Ryan Greenspan, Yosh Rao, Blake Yarber, and some elite ones that have happened to be my friends for a long time now. But it's very weird to have like almost seen that happen a million times from like standing outside of their pits or videos or whatever. And then almost just like stepped my consciousness down into one of the bodies that was inside of it finally. It's a weird full circle thing, you know, because you're just like, it'd be like if you see someone drive by in your favorite sports car all the time and eventually you're in it and you're like, oh, now I'm that guy. I did what I had to do to get to that level. Only this one, you can't buy this, right? Like, and it's such a rare thing. It's such a hyper rare occasion because a million people a year can see themselves climbing Mount Everest, and that's super special. But like the slots are available. You can do it, right? It's very hard, but you can go do it. But to somehow end up in one of those like those moments where you are the person on like a team that's at the pinnacle in any sport or anything, that was weird to hit. And it hit me like a psychedelic when it happened.
Yeah, it's man, it was so wild to watch that. And thank you for explaining that, because I'm gonna I just got this quick, so give me just a second to pull this up here. I experienced that same thing watching you go through that process. Let me pull this up, because what I'll do is when I'm taking photos, I kind of go around in a circle to like, okay, like who's focused, who's not in these huddles. And there was this one shot that I got of you where you were just like lasered in on that. So let me pull that up here. Actually, there was two. This is the first one that came to mind. Should pop up here in a second. So this is right when Ryan obviously started to talk at some point on Sunday, but then the conversation came back to you, and I saw you, like your eyes like would start to just look at every single player, and you went around the whole entire circle, and just the way you commanded everybody's attention was, I don't think I've seen anything like that other than, obviously when Ryan talks, Archie, when he talks a lot in huddles, like everyone looks at him and gives that attention. And there's something about Archie too. Like he's really big into manifesting in those power of moments.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oliver
yes,
too.
Yeah, Oliver's a big one for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that was such a wild experience, because I vividly remember you had some iconic moments at Tampa, and you would come off the field and I would hear you say like, I manifested that. Like I manifested that. I believe in that. It was just such a cool full circle moment from the conversation on Thursday.
Yeah. It's fun to have manifestation like added into this topic of like all these things, because maybe I can break it down in like simplified terms and help other people get by these things that they're definitely like physical roadblocks, but a lot of them are mental roadblocks, right? And so in the beginning of this topic, you had mentioned how, you know, a lot of guys come onto a top team and they end up like kind of standing in the background and this and that. And like at this point in my life and for the past, I don't know, decade or so, like I'm a hyper confident guy. So I already would believe like that ain't me. Like I am going to do this. I'm taking a spot. It is no offense to anybody else, but I am not here to be a, you know, like bridesmaid. Like and it's not like there's not ego behind that. Like I don't care about like the shine or like being a celebrity from being the guy, but it's just I'm not a like a sidekick, you know? Like I am very much the main star of my own movie. And I've even heard people like weirdly like diss me for that too.
Wow.
In the past, like certain like obviously more guarded teammates, but they're just like, oh, you know, live in your own world, Joe. And it's like, well, yeah, like shouldn't you want to be the star of your own movie? Because why would you want to go through life thinking like you were the fourth guy in the credits? Like, you know, like the like he's there, he's consistent, he's helpful, but like no, be the fucking star. And like that's part of manifesting your life too. Like if you want to manifest your dream life, it's like that one Rick and Morty episode. Like don't choose to be the guy that's just like the as high as he can get promoted manager at a rug store, you know, like do what you think is your dream life and then be the star of your own dream. So I hope that helps people like change their mindset so they're not just like drifting and existing, you know, like honestly, if all you're doing is like trying to make good money and like buy nice things and have a family, those are all great things in life. But if that's all you're doing, you're kind of just like part of survival and existence. Like create the family, repopulate, that generation moves on. You're just like part of like the infant amount of time, and your little blip is just carrying the torch and passing on, right? But if you're not like living the life you want to live, then what the hell are you doing here? You know, like I told myself early on that I would die before not living this life. And it was with that level of intention. You know, it wasn't quite the level of I will kill to live this. So that's the one thing I won't do is kill or give something to someone that causes them harm or whatever. Sure. But early on, when I had to make a lot of bad decisions in order to get to pro paintball, they weren't all good decisions. I'd do some bad decision things because it was that or paintball. But in my head, or when I was asked by people like, well, that's going to end up getting you to this, like it was always, I don't care. I would rather die or sit in jail than not live this life that I'm trying to picture for myself. And I think that's something that people need to do too. Like you have to be willing to die for it, or else you're not really living.
That's so powerful. Thanks for sharing that. 'Cause I think what you're describing is the norm for, I'm sorry, the opposite is the norm for people, where it's like, hey, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to have a family. I'm going to have a good, stable job. And it's, you kind of limit yourself of not, you're afraid to like take those chances of maybe starting your own business or becoming a professional paintball player. You know, insert whatever dream you have, you almost instantly invalidate it. And then you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And then if you have a teammate like you had where you're like, yeah, oh, there's Joe living in his own world again. Like that's not somebody you want to be around. That's not somebody part of your inner circle who's going to help elevate you to the higher game.
True.
So yeah, I resonate with that quite a bit. And I think a lot of people will, is if there's something that you want, go after it. What's the risk in not doing it, right? Like, you know, you talk about wanting things so bad that you will do anything for it. I wasn't like that until a few years ago, and really it was paintball. And I don't know if you can see it on my hat. I have the tagline "Live Your Legacy." It's kind of small,
Sweet.
and
Yeah, I
like
see.
that just resonates so deep with me. That resonates with me so deeply because I don't want to, like, I had this like flash forward of like being on my, deathbed when I'm 90 plus years old, looking back and like, man, I just regret not trying that. Like, what if I picked up a camera? Like, what would that have been? The people I would have met, like the things I could have done. And I never want to have that feeling ever again of living with that regret. And so that's what drives me for this. And I think what you shared is going to help drive some other people step into that uncomfortableness to go through with their goals.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. And it tells me that, you can both think the same thing and say it out in so many different words. But I think it's why we connected very easily at the event. And also, I didn't know that was the first time I met you in person. Like, it felt like I had talked to you before, but I think it's just because like this, like, I don't know you. Like, I don't know what high school you went to, but I know you. Like, when you connect and talk like that, you kind of know it's same vibration, right? And you know who this person is. And so I think that was why we talked easy, is because we both have that ideology of like, for you, it's living your legacy. Yeah, for me, it's very much like, it's more than just, I think so many people hear it as a cliche if you don't explain it enough, because it's just like, yeah, go after it. Like, really go after it is only a few words. It's hard to picture what going after it entails. But to me, it's like, it's not just trying for your dream and like having this plan B or escape route or safety net where like in the back of your mind, you're like, if it doesn't happen, I'll just get the corporate job. Right. It really can't be like that. And it's so funny. Like, when we're kids, I think every little kid checks the box for like baseball player, astronaut. Like, they want, that's what they want to do. But then how many have end up chasing like their like kid, like childlike dream? Like, almost no one. Instead, they're just like, well, logically, a billion people want to do this. What's the probability I make it? And it'd be very easy for me to take this 75K straight out of high school or college, comfy job with 401k and just live in the comfort zone, just the bubble of safety. Right. And so they don't actually go after it, or if they do, they don't try it long enough because they're like, yeah, and if I don't make it in 5 years, then I already have this awesome backup plan. And like, the backup plan isn't bad, but it's not their life. It's not like what they picture they could do with this one shot they have on this reality orb, right? And so very early on, I think it's important to go, if you check astronaut, I always try to check pro paintballer. I remember it's not there, but I remember so many times getting so angry when I was looking at the stupid square computers back like when we were kids and they were like big table computers. And it's like, there's the career fair day and like the teachers are like, well, they're just trying to like gauge where they're going to put you in society. So like, here's your skill sets. What of all this would you go through? And you're like, you see the 100 jobs and it's like architect, engineer, blah, blah. And I'd be like, excuse me, ma'am, where's professional paintballer? Like, cause that was the only thing I was going to check, the only thing. And if I didn't check that, I left it unchecked. Cause I'm like, I don't want to be any of this shit. I don't care about this. My mom's saying, you're good with words. You'd be a good lawyer. You'll make a lot of money. And I'd just be like, yeah, but I do not give a shit about money or like your idea of success. I only care about doing the thing that I really, really love and living this life that keeps running through my mind before I fall asleep.
Yeah. That's it right there. That's unlocking life, is doing something that you love, no matter the level of money, right? Like, money's going to come and go. It's just a tool to drive your life. But if you can go to bed every night being so happy and fulfilled with what you're doing, like that's unlocking life right there.
Yeah. And if you actually go after it with like everything you have, like sometimes it's scary, right? Because you're spending your last bit of money on doing that thing rather than like bills, and you're going to have till Friday to pay them. But like, I feel like this is where the universe kind of works in your favor a little. And it's like, you can't plan for this part, but like, it gives you those little bit of, it's like, all right, I see you are really committed and struggling for this, like the intention behind this is you will actually die before you stop doing this thing. Well, I kind of need you to fulfill that niche in life and achieve it. So I'm not going to let you die. So here's like, $20 on the sidewalk on your walk home or whatever it is. It kind of provides those tiny things at the end where it's like, it happens in so many movies, right? Where it's like counting down to the last seconds. And they're like hugging each other. I don't think this is going to work out. And at 3 seconds, someone opens the door, like, come in. Like it's so nerve wracking and there's like anxiety to it. But I promise, like, if you really put a lot of trust and faith in the universe that it's going to help you with those little bits you can't plan for on the way to whatever your dream is, and you are actually willing to die for your dream, like if there's that intention about it, then it always works out. Like I can't remember a time that I didn't survive or make it to what I was trying to do.
Yeah, you had mentioned that at some point, I think maybe it was during our conversation or one of your podcasts where you had traveled and you're like, you know what, I have no plan, but it's going to work out. Like I'm going to sleep on somebody's couch tonight, or I'm going to find food somewhere. It's just like it always naturally works out, whether if it's because of how bad you want something or the conversations that you have, the universe has a way of putting those opportunities in front of you.
Yes, but you have to see them. You have to like almost be able to pick it out and be like, okay, it is there. Now, what would I have to do correctly in the situation to like unlock that door or earn it?
Yeah, that's so true. Earlier, you mentioned that you're from Buffalo, New York. I'm very familiar with Buffalo. I grew up in southeastern Connecticut in a very small town. And so my dad was a Bills fan growing up. And so I went to Buffalo a few times. So I know that small town feel. I know exactly what you're going through. I would love to know that kid, who is in a town with really only just the Bills to look forward to every Sunday and not a whole lot else, with not a whole lot of a paintball scene. How did you go from being a small town kid to now on the biggest stage in paintball?
Yeah, that part is the other thing that I still wake up every day and it's like, man, how on earth was that possible? Like it's trippy because I won't say it's not imposter syndrome. Like I said, I'm a pretty confident guy, and I also know the work that I put in and the sacrifice to get here. But like when you think about these other factors, it is still like a pinch me thing, because it'd be like if somebody in the middle of the hottest part of Africa wanted to be an elite ice skater. Like how would it happen, right? Like
how do you connect those two?
Yeah, even if they in them have all the potential and the skill sets that might happen, like you're just kind of limited in your area, bro. Sorry, this one's not going to happen for you. And for me, that's what it felt like for a lot of the time, because like, people are very fortunate in these hotbeds like California, Texas, Florida. There's even parts of the Midwest like this where it's like the paintball field has 20 plus teams at any given time. There's divisional and national teams, not just like local regional teams. And there's semi-pro and pro teams. So like, I will not take anything away from anybody who's ever made pro. I know the kind of person that is, but if you grew up in Central Florida near CFP, now Legacy, and you were willing to do all that it took, well, guess what? You had pro players standing right there watching you. So as long as you stood out from the crowd, like the path is there for you. But for me, the path was not there. Like growing up in Buffalo, New York I'm not going to say it's the worst place ever. Like if you like extreme cold and snow, if you're a winter person, sure. If you like football and sports bars, sure. But if you're a person who's pursuing paintball from 10 years old and you're starting to think about it like, man, every time the winter comes, I have to risk death in snowstorms to drive to some half-width, poorly lit indoor field with rug on concrete, and this is how hard I have to train in these kind of conditions to catch up to kids that can just like drive 10 minutes to the nicest field ever in sunny California several days of the week. Like, I know I have to put in as much work, if not more than them. I already knew that early on, but like, how am I going to catch up to that in this, And there were so many other factors where it's like Buffalo is just it's dog shit. Like sometimes you want to go to practice and you're like, oh my God, it's gonna blizzard overnight. I already see the forecast. And I have to be at practice in Syracuse 2.5 hours away at 8 a.m. Well, I can't just wake up at 6 and drive there because I need about 3 hours to shovel my fucking driveway out, clear the 3 feet of snow off the top of my Ford Taurus, chip the ice off the windshield, defrost it, and then I probably need an extra hour because I'm going to be driving down the thruway at 40 the whole way,
Slower. Yeah.
fishtailing, hoping that this semi knows where it's going in front of me through the blizzard. And I shit you not, that was so many weekends and winters for me. And it's not like other people don't do this sometimes when you're in that Western New York area, but they didn't do it every weekend, every Saturday, Sunday. Even when the weather advisory was like, hey, just stay in, like probably don't come out. Like if you really wanted it, you're still going to go out there and sometimes get to an empty field because everyone else canceled.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, I'm already here. So I guess I'm going to shoot these cones and then I'm going to drive back through this all winter. And you do that week after week after week, year after year after year. So like, it's not a great situation to get to pro paintball, right? So sometimes I wake up laughing like I beat the Matrix. So I'm like, the fact that I came out of like that area with, once again, no national teams in the area, and the closest pro team was Philly All-Americans. And when they went bankrupt and died in 2009, I guess, like that was it. That pretty much seemed like, all right, well, where's the possibility at the dream now? And so from making it to that to pro paintball, that first time I was like hysterically laughing because I'm like, I did it, you know, like
Yeah, that inner kid's going crazy.
Yeah, and it wasn't just for me, it wasn't that moment of like you just made pro now. It was like thinking back to all those years of like the dog shit and just like doing sketchy things, living a sketchy life, going through sketchy like weather and bullshit and all this stuff, all for the sake of like, it's going to be worth it when you make it there. And then when I made it there, it was just like amazing and hysterical. And then making it to Dynasty, it happened again because it's like, dude, no fucking way did the kid from Snowy Buffalo with parents that didn't really like paintball and like, you know, minimum wage at the time when I started is like $7 an hour. So you work an 8-hour day to make $45 after tax, which is not even a case of paint when I started.
Yeah, not back then.
Paint was $70 at my indoor field. There was just a million things. And it's like, you know, why didn't Dynasty just take the talented kid with high potential that lives right down the block in San Diego? Why would they choose this like this random human generated onto the planet to basically like the earth was just like, well, let's see how much shit someone can take from the farthest possible away to get to Dynasty.
That's just, it's wild, like all the things that you went through. And I think, you know, a lot of kids, when they're at that age, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, and you throw so many things at them, that's where they make that choice of like, you know what? This isn't for me. I'm going to go do something else.
Yes.
But something in you like then just unlocked this is it for me. Was it, because I remember I think one of your podcasts maybe, or an earlier conversation, you had mentioned that your parents were divorced too. Was this like an escape for you? And so is this something that like, hey, when I'm doing this, like this is it for me? Like what was it that just drove you through no matter what was thrown at you, like you were still pursuing this?
Okay. This could be a little bit of a longer answer.
Totally fine.
I feel like I already answered kind of long, so I apologize. And stop me if you want to like open up a certain rabbit hole in this. But
sure.
You know, at the time, I didn't think of really anything as an escape because you're like a teenager and you're just like, this is what I want to do right now, you know, because you're more about like fun and living your life and like friends mean anything or everything to you. And like in those early times, like when I started playing paintball, I was 10, but like when you're starting to like go after it, you're like 13, like, you know, young teenager. At the time, I didn't see anything as escape because it was just, I love doing this. I want to do this or whatever. But yeah, when your parents divorce early. Mine divorced at 7, and not in the best way. Like, they're cordial and everything now. It's, water under the bridge. But at the time, it wasn't great. And my mom wasn't like, she's like lower middle class. Like, she has a teaching job, but it's not great. My dad was pretty ruined by the divorce. And so now, shit's difficult. Like, you're splitting time between two people that you love, but they are feuding furiously for, months, years. And
you're caught in the middle of that.
Yeah. And there's plenty of little things you're doing already. You're, as a kid, you're playing video games or skateboarding or whatever. But when you find that thing that really bites you hard, well, now you can kind of like tune out anything, because it's like immersion, right? Like, you fall so deeply into it that, like, it's not just an activity like the other activities in your life. It like becomes your lifestyle, and it's consuming, and it's a good release, but also it's like a different type of focus or escape, because it gives you a focus. Like, it gives you a thing to not just be like mopey, and not that that wouldn't be justified, right? But like, if you just want to, like, fetal position, cry in your room all the time because life blows and two people you love are causing each other extreme discomfort, and you and your brother don't know how to deal with it, that's just going to be like kind of riling in pain all the time. So everybody does kind of look for an escape, right? And I had other escapes too. Like, in that early teenage time, it's like, well, what do you do with the days that you're not playing paintball? And from your skateboarding side of you, it's like you end up meeting those kids that smoke pot too early, right?
Yeah.
I have nothing against marijuana, but if all you do is just like get high all day, every day, especially as a kid, and like all of a sudden you're starting to drop those other things you do during the weekdays. I never dropped paintball, but like the other stuff, or even like really wanting to be communicative with like some of your family, like that you're mad at for all this. And it said you just come from school, bye, and you leave and you go like smoke weed in the woods all day. Like, that was the escaping, I would say. And then that leads to other overindulgences, like, because what does that come with? It comes with, soon it's going to be drinking, and then it's going to be eating good food with those two things. And then when you're young and you're eating your feelings, that becomes like too much of that. And eventually you're just like this glutton, but on the weekend you happen to still play paintball. And that's what it felt like for the longest time for me.
Wow. It sounds like a snowball effect, like that could just keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
It's, I've thought a lot about like paintball being an escape lately. And, I had Yosh on a few weeks ago, and he talked about it's like a form of manifestation where you have to focus so much in the moment that you kind of like tune out all the noise. I don't think I've ever looked at it as like a second level to that, of that second level being immersion. And I think that's where a lot of kids at that age, they're looking for that, like, how can I get immersed into something? That was a great answer. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I did want to make one more note about it, because why I also don't see it as escape is because of this. When there's those other things happening in your life that are the escapes, if there's something you're immersed in, it's kind of the one thing that actually grounds you and like keeps you. That's why I said it's more of a focus, because like I remember seeing the other people around me, some of them even, the kids my age on my original kids teams or like my early regional league teams, and they loved paintball too. But as like the escape side, which was like for me a lot of like the young partying, hooked them more and more. You saw their balance scale go like this until eventually they were gone. They weren't on my paintball team anymore. Like one of my best friends of all time, so many of them like this, right? Each time is now gone. It's like first year 14, and I'm not going to name their names, but gone, because like they got hooked too far on the other way. And then 15, 16, several more gone. By the time like 17, and I'm on like, a pretty good like regional X-ball team, of the like original, I don't know, in our generation, like the 40 kids, there was quite a lot of kids that played paintball back then, which is weird. I don't see like 40, 13-year-olds in my field now, but of all of them, all of a sudden it's just me. You know what I mean? It's only me left. Or there might be a few that come out once a month and they're weekend warriors, but like, they
Yeah.
didn't go to the national level with me at 17. They just stayed playing like, you know what, we're just going to show up and play regional paintball. We don't really want to even practice anymore. And so some of those people gone because they found other things that, you know, they liked more, like the partying, right? But once you're in that late high school, college age, some of them gone because the escape killed them, right? Because it's an OD or a car accident. And seeing those things made me like grab onto paintball even harder. Because it's like, I remember so many times being at a high school party or eventually a frat party and doing stupid shit. But there's always that moment when I'm seeing other people take it too far or make the bad decision at the end of the night where something would come through and it's like, you should leave early right now because you have to get up at 6 a.m. and drive to paintball, right? And that's back when you could be like hungover and drive. Like you're a kid, right? Now I couldn't. I hate hangovers, so I haven't drank in forever like that. But as a kid, you can like party all night, sleep for 4 hours, and just wake up and 18 and go play X ball. And so I would do that, which I'm not saying anybody should do. That's not great, but I would at least do it. Whereas other friends, I'd be waking them on the couch and they'd be like, no, fuck practice. And they'd stop going. Little by little, it'd go from me trying to like, come on, our dream, to like the last one. And like they're going every other time. And eventually they just, you know, the season ends and they don't get on the tryout for the next team or they don't come back. And it was always me having that thought, at least of like, okay, my life is kind of not a lot of good decisions in this Monday to Friday now. And all I give a shit about is feeling good artificially. So like just getting high or drinking or eating Philly cheesesteaks at midnight or whatever. But come Saturday and Sunday, that was when I was going to like clock in towards that dream life I wanted to live. Now seeing it, it's half-assedly, admittedly, right? Because it's like, great, you're focused on the dream you want on the days that you play the thing. Yeah, fuck you, kid. You're not doing what you're supposed to do in the other 70% of your week or your conscious life.
Wow. It truly sounds like, and let me know if this resonates or not, it sounds like paintball like has saved your life.
Paintball 100% saved my life. And
Wow.
I've heard a lot of people say that, but for me specifically, paintball for sure kept me out of jail, because when decisions I was making could have went much further or to a different level, there was always that thing. It's like, but you have NPPL Boston coming up in 2 weeks. Do you really want to miss that over this possible risk for this little bit more or whatever? Or times that like the night could have went further, I went, sorry guys, and people are trying to keep you there, right? And you're like, I gotta go. And you do go because you're thinking, okay, I shut the door. Yeah, I could have met a girl tonight, or, you know, had more friends and drank more beers than my friends. But like right now I'm going to get about 4 or 5 hours of sleep and I want to make it to practice tomorrow. And then the next day you find out that one of the cars didn't make it home, you know, for whatever reason. And I have so many people that I graduated from high school with, or people in my young generation of paintball, because Buffalo, New York is a cold shithole and there's not a lot to do, that have DWIs, like several DWIs.
Yeah.
And I knew a ton of kids that overdosed, and I knew a few kids that got killed in drunk driving car accidents. And so all of those things were like in your like realm of possibility. They weren't 1% chancers for me and what I was doing that time. You know, there was the other group that went to jail for doing a lot of the same shit I was doing to try to make it in paintball. So my chances every day were probably like 50-50. They're right there, you know?
Wow.
And so I really think that the dream of like, you have to stay at least focused enough to try to chase this pro paintball thing, 100% saved my life from either being killed early or ruined and like probably still very debilitating right now, you know, 15, 20 years later.
Wow, that's so wild, because you've been through so much, and I think it made you who you are now. And so when you're on the field in these stressful situations, you know, 1-on-2s, 1-on-3s, like it's nothing for you.
Nothing. Yeah, never. Yeah, paintball doesn't phase me anymore. Like my heart doesn't pump very hard. And a lot of pros will say this too. You get to a point where you're finally like, not yelling and shouting and frantic, but you're like, you just found this composure where you're
Yeah.
playing at like a normal level. Like aside from when you get in the intense gunfight, off the break for the dominance, after that, you're almost like just relaxed and like seeing everything big picture. And so, yeah, in a 1-on-3 or whatever, I'm not going to win every one of them, but like, I'm relaxed. I'm never like not composed because I've lived through some of the highest stress shit you can live through for a long, long time. And I've put myself in some very raw and gritty situations. So, like, I play very raw and gritty and like clawing through to survive because, I'm a survivor.
Yeah, I've had a few folks, and I won't name them, but I've had a few folks over the past few weeks and months like say how much this podcast has just resonated with them because they're in a low spot on their life or they don't have a lot. And so to hear players like yourself go through some of the challenges they're going through now, like it helps them so much. What advice would you give to somebody who is potentially they're going out to a party tonight and they want to pursue this paintball dream? What advice would you give them to stick to what they want to do and not be pressured into what their friends want them to do?
Oh man, that's a good one. And I hope this helps at least one person. So man, I guess listen to this and then rewind it and listen back to it a second time because this is a DM that I get like weekly. And there's even the same few kids that I won't say their names, but they've been saying this for me for years. They reach out and they go, man, I want to play pro so bad. I'm ready to play pro. In their head, they really think they're ready. And like, I know some of them, but other ones I can just look at and just be like, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you're not ready. And it's like, I hate to come off as like blunt or it's not mean, but it's like, I'm just coming off as like the honesty, like the universe would, because I saw what it took. And disclaimer here, there are people that have made it to pro because they bought their way in or because they're friends with people. There is a few other ways to squeak in the back door and make it into these places that honestly, these people should have never made it to. Sorry, not sorry. And anybody else can probably, the face will pop up in your head of people over the years or now, whatever. And so you know it. And if anybody takes offense to this, it's like, well, I guess the boot fits, right? There's always ways to cheat in life and get to these certain items or places of reality that people don't necessarily deserve. And that fucking sucks because it discounts the stuff that people had to work for. But beyond those outliers, here's what it is. People out here who's wondering this, you will not live the life that you dream of if there's a couple things that are like, just like there's requirements to live it, there's also these requirements of not doing, and so much of life is about more than just commitment. Because I know people that they are super committed. They never miss a day. They're on time, whatever. But it's not just commitment. It's the stuff you don't see. It's the iceberg of sacrifice. And if you're not willing to sacrifice some things that you like a lot for one thing that you love more than anything, it's not going to happen. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow. But that was really the only difference between me and a bunch of other people in my like younger 20s, mid 20s area, like that semi-pro block of time where we were all just as talented. They were just as committed, but they did a few things in terms of like their habits that they were not willing to give up. And some of them were bad things, right? It's like if you want to be I don't know, an NFL player, like you think NFL players are just like eating ice cream all day. Not saying these people are doing that, but like, yeah, you could be really good at throwing the ball. You could be this and that, but like the NFL player has this discipline thing that they learned as a trait. And so they might love ice cream, but they're not eating it every night. I mean, a lot of that was like smoking weed. Like you're on a lot of semi-pro teams where everybody's sweet, but like some of the guys don't have like the lung capacity or stamina to get through a full match if needed, because like halfway through the day, they just have to go to the car and hit the bong. Like that was a lot of Florida semi-pro paintball, It's like oh, dude, you are so good. You're here with me every weekend, but you won't stop like getting high on the way to practice or at practice. Like, can't you just save that for like, I don't know, your Wednesday nights if you're going to do it at all? And they wouldn't give that up. And so I see these kids that reach out and they think they got it already. And you know what? They're probably talented. They'd probably beat a few us in snapshot battles or shoot bunker us here and there. But like, it's not about the physical part. It's also about like, are you willing to do everything asked of you? And will you treat yourself as a professional before being a professional? Because that goes back to what we were talking about before of like manifestation. If you're going to see it in your head, and if you're going to like believe and actually feel the feeling of what it would feel like to win before it happens, well, what would the feeling of a win, what would a winner be doing? And so like, what do you think a professional is doing? You think a professional is skipping that Saturday drill day because they're just like, man, I had a late night out. I just don't. No professional would say that unless they're like a really, really tenured professional. And it's like, hey, at this point, that guy's probably got it. He can miss a weekend or two, like, you know, Ryan Greenspans of the world, right? But
Yeah.
you divisional guy coming up, if you, back to your question, even occasionally skip out on practice or working out or the thing that you have to do to get to being a pro because, you know, you're getting invited to that party or
Yeah.
the girl is calling you, or, you know, there's girls in this league that the guy is calling you and they want you to come out and it's going to be the sweetest Friday night ever. Man, that does sound great. Nobody's going to say that isn't sweet, but eventually you have to realize, first of all, is it the best Friday night ever? Like, it's probably just another, you're at the frat party, you're at the club and everybody's having a great time and you're drinking, but like, you know, the next day you're going to feel it. And the next day you're either going to miss practice or you're going to show up to practice 15 minutes late and play half-assed. And that was like the really stark, like punch in the face moment for me when I like, admittedly it came in like a psilocybin journey, but it was like telling me, and this is like the year before I went pro, it was just like telling me how black and white everything is. Like there's gray area in a lot of stuff, but in making it, you either do it or you don't. You don't like do 75% of what's asked and then life's like, yeah, sure, okay, you get it, you earned it. Like you really, it's not like that. So when things became yes or no for me, it's like, okay, should I go to this party and be there till fucking 2 a.m? Will that help me go pro? If it's yes, go. If it's no, you just can't do it. It's plain and simple. And so I started looking at all of those questions in my life, and then I cut out every single one of them. That if the question was, is this going to get me closer to pro paintball? If the answer was no, I stopped doing it cold turkey.
Yeah, I mean it's that famous Yoda quote, right? Like do or do not. There's no try. So it's like there's no in between. It's either you're all in or you're not.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, what a great answer. I think when you're explaining that, you know, I was thinking back to it. If you want something so bad, every decision that you make off the field or off the stage, or whatever the thing is that you want to aspire to, every decision that you make has to culminate to that. And yeah, this is something that Amanda told me a few weeks ago, and you know what you're telling me about too is the life that you want. You have to find a way to live it now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't wait to have that whatever the money or the success is. Like you've got to find a way to start doing those things now and embody that now.
Yes.
That way, it's every decision you make is working towards that goal.
Yep. The embodiment. That's exactly it. It's like you're picturing this life that you're manifesting, and you're fully convincing yourself of the feeling of that. I'll just use pro paintball as an example because it's the biggest one I used. Yeah. So I remember that year before I finally went pro. That whole year, I acted like I was a pro. You know, not a fake it till you make it way, but I just pictured as if a team had already taken me. And it's like, well, what would I be doing at that level? Like, how much more effort would I be? So I'm like, I remember that particular year, like I had been mostly vegetarian, but becoming a pescatarian. I hadn't drank anything. I hadn't smoked in years. And I hadn't made like a gluttonous decision, like a staying out too late, chasing the dragon, choosing like what do you call it? Instant gratification fun over like
Yeah.
a result or a thing that improved my ability to go. I hadn't done any of that for like a couple years at this point, but this particular year, it was like I was already I'd be like getting up and running like I'm gonna be at an NFL combine every day. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
then
Yeah.
I'm at the weight room for like 3 hours a day. And I'm just doing all these things where it's like, okay, I know even when I make it on most of these teams as a rookie, I'm not gonna get paid, but I need to do this as if it was my paid profession. And like the job I'm working or the stuff I'm doing to afford this, that isn't what's my profession. Like that's making me the money to do this, but this is what I'm treating like if someone paid me, how seriously would I treat it? And I was treating it so serious the whole year. And I was also doing things that pros would do. Like I was starting to do clinics, and I only got a couple, but I got a few clinics in as a semi-pro player. And I was filming this like film series that it's still on YouTube, like 30 episodes, like way back then on a shitty camera. And I was like, well, I bet you like Greenspan or Oliver or these type of guys would be doing this at the elite level. I'm not at this level yet. Like I know I don't have the credibility, but if I think like that, then it's wrong. So I just gotta know that I know how to play ball. I know what I'm doing out there. I'm a smart player. So I'm just gonna start putting it out to the world like a pro would. And I started playing in other countries like pros do. Admittedly,
Wow.
the first time or two it was on my own dollar, but I'm just like I'm gonna live this international elite pro paintballer life. I'm gonna just start living it now. And by the end of the year, I went pro.
Wow, there's something so powerful about putting yourself out in the world. Like it's a form of accountability, and I think it's also internally showing how much you trust yourself to make something happen.
100%.
Um,
Yeah,
Good.
I know the question you have at the end. So the putting it out there to the world for accountability thing is very much a secret of life. Like you kind of gotta, it's just like saying things out loud is almost like praying to the universe for it. Well, if you say out what you're gonna do now, I don't know if it's like the good side of ego where you don't want to be embarrassed or ashamed you didn't do it. So like there's just a little bit more like oomph on getting going and doing it than like having these dreams run through your head cyclically over and over and over.
Yeah, it's a small step towards that goal and a small step towards making that a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to, so there's a few more topics I want to dive into, but before we do that, there's a few pictures that I took at Tampa, and I don't know if you've seen these yet or not. Like I know at some point, like the album's been shared with the team, like in your Discord, but there's two moments that I saw that were like, that I want to get your thoughts on. This first one, I think it was after like 1 year, just like monster points that you had. So for people that aren't watching, they're just tuning in on Spotify or Apple Podcast. It's a picture of Joe with his arm around Harrison Fry right after a point.
Yeah,
Do you remember this moment?
I do. We just held off a long 2-on-2 against Damage to seal up the end of the match. And we
Yeah.
burned like, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but we burned a lot of time. They were only 2 down. If we had lost quick, they have time for a fast point. Or if we had lost long, maybe they could still. Either way, this point was pivotal.
Yes. And earlier when you were talking about, like everything you've gone through in your life, when you're in, moments in paintball where you're not stressed anymore, I saw that. And you were like, you would, turn your head back to Harrison and like, you're still rolling your force and you're not missing a reload. And like, it's just a conversation. And I've seen a lot of pros in that situation that are, whether they're newer to the scene or newer to a team, or maybe it's their first time playing on a Sunday, like they start to panic, right? Like they miss the reload and like they just start to be like all kind of all over the place. But you are so calm and relaxed in that moment.
Yeah. So I'll explain something and get to why that is. So when you have a extreme bond with someone and like not just like, okay, I'm going to give you trust because of benefit of the doubt, but when you have real trust in them through going through a lot of shit or having a lot of like peak experience and memories of them, it's different to play with that person. You know, this is where like paintball is such a cool, fascinating, like mental paradigm on our reality for us, because it, on the outside, it looks like people gunfighting to shoot each other, you know, and it feels, when people watch, that's all it is. And they're like, oh, why are you shooting so much? Why don't you just like fight the guy? And they think it's very wild, wild west, right? And then when you teach divisional paintball, like when you teach D3, D2, like probably coming up to not quite semi-pro, now it's like, well, let me explain to you how to play with teamwork, how to talk, how to get to angles, how to like all this and that. And like, you know, D4-5 knows that, but you're teaching a little higher level, right? But once you're at semi-pro and pro, the game is not even just that anymore. Like there's this upper echelon of the game that is so much more mental than I can really put into words and fully give justice. But it's a lot about like everybody out there is elite. Like even at the semi-pro level, guys don't really miss shots. Guys are good gunfighters. Guys can run and gun. But the worst semi-pro guy and the best pro guy, you all have pretty similar skill sets. You know, you can, if somebody tells you to do something, you can physically execute it. But do you know what to do, like from experience or like critically thinking about situations? And do you have like the mental fortitude and composure to do it under the highest stress? You know, it's easy to execute things when it's 5-on-2 and you're executing on them. Can you still execute all the right things when it's 2-on-5? And I think when you get to this level of trust and bond with certain people, that's when you can get to those things. And so coming forwards, the only other person that I really, really had with this in life was Josh Hallberg, who, if anybody doesn't know who that is, it's probably for a reason, because he's quiet and hidden in the shadows and has no social media, doesn't do interviews. But one of my best friends on the planet is Josh Hallberg, and I think he was the most underrated player to ever play paintball, ever, because that guy could execute more than most people. Like he kind of like a Malloy, where if you asked most of the pros to do some of the shit you saw Josh do, they could not physically do this. He was elite in so many ways. But when I played CrossFit with Josh, because we've been in the shit in real life together, so we have trust from going through like some shit. And so when you're in the game, we would like win 2-on-4s and 2-on-5s, because in that moment, I'm like, okay, I already know that I'm going to do everything in my power to not let that guy die. Like I'll die first before he dies. And I know it's not that he's just doing this, but I know that he will do this for me. So we would just like, as the pinch got tighter, as the players came to be in like the spots to close, it's just like, hey man, tuck your pack in. That guy's a bunker behind you. And he does it. Right. And I go, hey, you see them start over fighting, and you can just have a conversation rather than yelling or freaking out. You just go, let me know if that guy's wrapped on you. And they go, all right, get ready. And you're like, he's wrapping. And then you just get a free kill off it. Right. And like you talk each other through these situations like you would talk through a bad situation in real life, where if you don't talk in real life, if you're just panicking, then you die or you get arrested or whatever it is. Right. And so out there on the field, you have to talk through it like that. And sometimes you still don't make it, right? Too many guys once you die, but sometimes you do, because you were able to have the composure and trust in each other and keep the communication flowing while you're executing at a high level. Like, let me rewind and say, if you're a D3 player, it doesn't matter how good you're going to talk to the other guy. You're probably not like landing the shots or catching mistakes out of pro players closing the field on you. So you have to be at a certain level, you know, like to have this work. So when I play with Harrison, I have that, because we have traveled the world together. We've won a lot of tournaments together. We've been through some shit together. And so whenever the situations came down, I can look over, and like some people would probably get a little anxious when Harrison's getting squirrely, because they're just like, relax. You're gunfighting too much. You're panicking.
And I've heard other Dynasty players say that to Harrison before too.
But you don't want him doing that right off the break when it's too early and the game is developed. But in the 2-on-4, 2-on-5, I need him to do that. I need him to fight for his life like me. And I know he's not just wigging out and flip-flopping. I know that he fights for his life like me, where it's like every shot is calculated. And while the windows are open because one guy is put in, he's already fighting the next guy. And you need a scrappy, gritty guy with you to like play out those situations and pull them back and then be there to like live until the countdown hits 0. And that's why like I knew we were going to do that whole time. And that moment was special, hugging him out, because it's like we didn't just do it against like ML Kings or, you know what I mean? Like some team on paper I expect to beat. No offense to all y'all teams I expect to beat, but I expect to beat a lot of teams now, right? Now I expect to beat everybody in my head, but going into that tournament before, there's just some teams where it's like, this is my easy team in the bracket.
Sure.
You know?
Everyone goes through it. Yeah.
But to do that against Tampa Bay Damage, it felt very much like, oh man, like me and Harrison are not like the little brothers in the league anymore. Like, I'm not saying we're king shit either. There's no ego about it, but it's just like, I can look him in the eye and be like, I expect that me and you are going to do that from now on. Like, I don't care about the name or the extra body downfield from now on. Like, I now expect that me and you are going to claw tooth and nail to survive out whatever's thrown at us and fight away whatever we need to win the points for now on. It doesn't matter who's down there.
So what you just explained is one of the many reasons why, like, I love paintball so much. And that right there, if we can find a way to tap into that and explain that to the general public, I think they'll understand paintball a lot more. Is, yeah, you're shooting at people, right? But like the trust that you have to have in your teammate amongst chaos, and when you're not looking at each other, but you trust that he has your back. If we can find a way to tap into that, like, that's, to me, part of the magic of the sport that people don't realize until you actually experience it, or you can see it, right? Because there was, when I'm taking that photo of you and I'm watching this unfold, I know the story, the backstory of, you know, Harrison obviously came from Infamous, and you coming from that squad too. Like, wow, these guys have played all around the world, different teams, and now here they are on the same team again in this situation where people are probably counting them out, and then to come out on top, like, it was such a cool moment for you too.
Yeah, it was. You know, I wasn't sure exactly what you were going to lead into with that, but I thought because you mentioned the Infamous thing that you knew the one part of the story where Harrison is the one who got me on Infamous. And then like only a couple weeks after, he left. And that that is, we don't got to go too far into it, but he got me on, and then he got the call from Dynasty, and I already knew he was getting calls. Right. And so I had, before he got me on, I was like, Harrison, listen, I have a big money offer with this other team. I'd rather play with you and Tim and these Infamous guys. I like the vibe of it. I like the brand, the stuff they use. I like everything about it. But like, I got to know you're staying, because a lot of this decision is to finally play with you in pro. And, you know, this was before we're about to hike a volcano. And he promised me that he'd stay. And I was like, dude, pretend like you're getting the phone call from blank team right now. You still have to stay, right? Like, you're going to stay, and we're going to stick this out and try to grow and make a winning team together. And right. Yes. And so that was like a promise. And then after a few weeks, he told me, he's like, dude, I got to go to Dynasty. And I'm just like, you know, you got to let go of your ego, and you got to be a real friend here, because a real friend wants what's best for their friend, whether it serves them or not. That's like my definition of like a true friend to someone. Like, hey man, I want you with me, but if you're not with me, I want what makes you actually happy. So I understood as soon as he said it. I'm like, I get it. It's the team on your wall. Like, when they give you a chance, how do you say no? Right. So I got it. But also I was like, man, I thought that's why we talked out the conversation, because I thought you would have thought about it a little deeper, right? Like, really critically thought, like, will I be able to say no? Because if not, just tell me now. It's okay. But you told me like you would turn down anything, and that's why I came to this team. And now I'm not going to leave. And turns out it was a great team and experience, and I had other friends on the team. But like, realize that it's like if you, you know, got me a job and we get to work together, and then you went, all right, peace, and then left, right? It's the same thing. And it's like, bro, I came to work with you specifically. didn't even matter about the team itself. It could have been any team. It was me and you were going to work together to try to win finally. And you're just going to leave for this other team. Like, that obviously is going to hurt anybody, because it's like, bro, I get it. They're all proven. They all have wins, but you don't think I'm that good. You don't believe in me. You don't believe we can win together. And so that part of it hurt for a while. And once again, I'm a critical thinker, and because I can be empathetic with this situation, because I know it's chasing the ultimate dream that every 10-year-old wants of being on Dynasty. I got it. But naturally, whether I was telling myself I forgave him or not, it cost me a little bit of trust of his, right? I'd still trust my life with him, but I didn't fully trust his word after that, because I'm like, you gave me your word. And eventually, after a few like standoffish events where we'd still shoot the shit, but it didn't feel like brothers quite anymore, I talked to him about it. I remember being like, bro, can I just tell you that, like, I don't care what decision you make. And this is for all my close friends out there, but like, be mindful of other people, right? And once again, if it's something you have to do, now that kind of goes out of the window. But before you make a decision and put your word on it, anybody out there, really be mindful of how that affects other people around you. Like, if you aren't consciously aware that a decision you're about to do affects a bunch of other people, there's plenty of things you decide to do that don't affect anybody. But like, let's say you're married with kids and some job is offered you in Alaska. Even if you love Alaska, that can't just be an easy, I'm going. Because, like, do these other people want to live in fucking Alaska? Right?
Yeah.
And so if you tell someone something, it's hard, because like, you might be making a decision that is really important for you. But if you tell someone you're going to do something, you got to expect that now, even though you don't see it, you leave, they leave, but behind the scenes, they are now making a bunch of decisions and rearranging their life around that decision,
Wow.
So when someone tells you they're going to do something and you like say no to a bunch of opportunities and close doors and then go do these things, and these things now require you to change a lot of other stuff in your life, and like, get your family ready for it, and this and that and that, and then it doesn't happen, it's just like, oh man, it's like you just told me that you wanted me to build you a pyramid, and I built it up to the top 90th percent, and then you came back a few weeks later and you went, actually, we're not going to build that pyramid, and you're like, oh, yeah. I put in a lot of legwork already towards this thing. So I talked to them about that, and it was like, Harrison's a very intelligent guy, but it was like that part of it didn't dawn on him. And then, we had like it's not like an apology or, but like, then we had that understanding of it. And then after a little bit more talking, it's like, then after that, I knew I could trust him 100% again. I knew that wasn't going to happen again, because not only are we now on different teams, I'm on Infamous, he's on Dynasty, but I knew that he now knew that, like, bro, like, I treat you as like one of my closest people on earth. So like, if you tell me that we're about to ride into battle, I'm already strapped up and riding, right?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
I'm going, and then that transition to Dynasty. And it's like, when we're on the field together, I'm like, all that trust is back. I don't think about anything else. And I can tell all the Dynasty guys have the same feeling. Like, they all, because they've been playing and winning tournaments together for like 25 years, that core group, you can just feel it. It's more than, there's plenty of teams that say family in their huddle and it's bullshit. But when they say family, you're like, oh yeah, like, these guys would like, drive across town and save each other's families from burning buildings and shit.
Totally. Well, thanks for opening up and sharing that. I didn't realize that you both had went through that before that. So that makes that moment even more special, in my opinion, then. Wow. That's incredible.
100%. Yep. And love you, Harrison. If you ever listen to this, I love you, dog. That wasn't harping on you. We already talked about this, but it's more explaining to you or other people how, like, trust is earned. Trust can be lost, sometimes not all the way, but you can gain it back. But it also takes letting your ego go and going and having that hard conversation you need to have. Like, we all think about that, and we almost like pretend we know what it's going to be like. You picture you having the talk with the person, and sometimes you see it going bad or being a shouting match, and then people just go, you know what, and they avoid the conversation. But like, you have to go have the hard conversation.
Yeah, it's the stories that you tell yourself or that you craft, or like even the lies you tell yourself to talk yourself out of it. And man, you imagine if you didn't have that conversation and then you both were in that moment, like on the field against Damage. Crazy. So like
It's wild, right?
talk about like everything, how it leads up to certain moments in your life. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to share one more picture with you. You had spoke about like, the four horsemen and, obviously like, Yosh, Ryan, Alex and whatnot. I took another photo of you and I want to get your thoughts on it when I pull it up. So I want to get your reaction to it.
Blake is the other horseman, by the way. I know people don't consider him that, but
Totally
people
agree.
need to give more credit to Blake. He's been on the team for like forever now. That is a true original Dynasty vet,
100%.
I'm happy you caught this photo. I didn't know anybody caught the anthem moment.
Yeah, so I'll explain it after. I want to get your thoughts on it first.
Oh man, this is a moment you manifest, right? Like, when it happens, there's definitely a part of you that's like, holy shit, am I tripping right now? Like, is this a more than a visual, but like, is this I don't know, am I dreaming? And it's because you have to picture this moment so many times, and oftentimes you're at 99% belief, but I guess you didn't believe enough. Like, you were just picturing it without feeling or intention behind it. But if you're in pro paintball, hopefully you're not just there to be like happy to be on the team and riding the bench filling people's pods, right? When I'm on any team, I am picturing winning. And at this stage, you always picture yourself like enjoying every moment of it, right? Like, hopefully not just thinking about the win, because that's fleeting. So you're thinking about all the moments, and you can't see the future. So as much as you try to visualize you doing certain things on the field, you can't actually picture all the moments of the match. But what you can firmly and easily wrap your mind around, and a vivid picture that you can always paint as like imagery for your story in your head, is just you standing there for the anthem. Like, that's pretty simple, right? Like, you can see that happening, and you gotta know it's going to happen for you. But I have pictured this moment for 10 years since the last time I did it. I have not been able to do that since my first year of Pro X Ball. I want to say it was Atlantic City or Virginia Beach with Tampa Bay Damage. We made it to the finals against Russian Legion, and that was the last time I have been to a finals. And I've been playing pro paintball for a pretty long time now. So this moment means more than, everybody thinks it's special. It's an honor to be there. But for me, it's like, holy shit. Like, this is almost like stepping on sacred ground right now,
Totally.
because it's such a rare experience. Like, that's another weird thing is a lot of people, like even like a 15-year-old fan, when the games aren't going, like on Thursday when it's a field walk day, you can just walk out on the center court and stand on the pro field. And then you can play on the pro field if your divisional team gets there. But only like 20 people ever get to the point 5 times a year where they get to stand on the grass for that moment, where there's the, hand on the heart, you're listening to the anthem, and everybody is almost in like this, like, quiet, focused solitude, like they're at church together to prepare themselves for this one, in my opinion, sacred moment. Because it's like, it's the crucible. It's like the meeting of the people who were the very most prepared and the wanted it the most. And in a weird way, people aren't worshiping you, but it's like they all come to see the spectacle of like, this is it. This is what it leads to. It is what we are about to witness. Let's make a special opening ceremony for that type of moment.
Yeah, that's those are two of my most favorite moments to capture at NXL weekends are huddles, right? Like where you get all the emotions, But watching two teams line up for the national anthem, there's just so many different emotions when you look down the line. You know, some players like yourself had your eyes closed and you're just like taking in all the things that have happened between those 10 years for that one moment. Some people are getting anxious. Some people are, you know, looking around because they've been there so many times that they're taking it all in. So it's such a wild phenomena in that however long that song is to watch all these different people experience it differently. So
Yeah, being present is like nothing else, right? Like I always feel like the time that I walk into the pits for semifinals is similar, like
yeah,
a hollowed ground, because those 4 teams on the board are the last teams there. You know, everybody else got kicked off the mountain in this King of the Hill game. So when you see only those 4, that's a cool moment to me too. And I'm always like looking at the scoreboard and going like, what a journey. Like it's been a battle. There's a lot of bodies back there so far. And somehow I'm still alive. So I know I haven't won yet. I haven't even made the finals yet, but like, let me appreciate where this is, you know, let me at least celebrate this small victory along the way of like, this is what it is. These are the final warriors. And then when you get to the finals, I don't really look at the scoreboard thing. It's more, I know I'm about to walk out and do the anthem, which I've now only done twice in my pro X ball career. But it's in that moment where like, no matter what, I want to fucking win this tournament. I picture myself winning it, but
yeah.
I am so happy and grateful and proud to be part of this moment right here, because like I know the rarity of it. It's just as rare as playing this match I'm about to play. And it takes the last, you know, 10, 20 years to make it to this spot. So it's like the
Things
Fellowship
are
of the Rings, you know,
totally.
yeah, you look way back and you're like, holy shit. Like the amount of battles I had to win and the amount of carnage left along the way to stand on this peak right here is like almost unfathomable. It'd be hard to go back and count it all, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for opening up and being honest with that, because I think a lot of pros wouldn't in that moment. I think a lot of people be like, yeah, the job's not done. Like we don't celebrate yet. Like we keep going. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think when you're going through these events, like you have to take in moments and appreciate the moments for what they are, because they almost give you motivation to go tackle that next moment. And so I really appreciate that you opened up about that.
Yeah, of course. And that's a hard thing that I oftentimes still go back and forth with in my head, because I really believe in living in the moment. Like as someone who going through different parts of my past was not good at being present, was always kind of doing shit to escape, or you know, staying high and daydreaming about the future dream rather than like, all right, well, what can I enjoy right now around me, or how can I speak better to the people that are with me right here? As someone in that, like, I understand the importance of being present, but also there is importance in like winning the little battles, celebrating the little victories. If you only ever celebrate when you win, it's, you know, as much as you want to believe you can win every one of them, it's kind of unrealistic. And I'm a person who never lets unrealism or lack of you know, what are the odds hold me back. That's why I made it to pro paintball. But still, there's a part of me that from losing far more than I've ever won knows like the amount of times I've lost a tournament and then thought back about it on the flight home and met like, man, I didn't really allow myself to do anything else that like put a smile on my face that whole time, because I was like holding it in, waiting for that big letting it out when we
That
win.
release.
And since we didn't win that whole time, like, great, I'm focused, I'm in the zone, I'm playing good, I'm scouting, but like I didn't really like enjoy uh anything else around me, which that would be present too, right? But also
Sure.
I didn't enjoy like looking back on the process or making it more enjoyable, or I didn't enjoy like the things that make the moment more special, like while you're in that anthem, thinking of it not as just this anthem, but like all the years that lead up to it. And so I don't know which way is better, because like before a game, sometimes I like to sit there and be so present that I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm not thinking about like my first point or pulling off the break. I'm literally like just standing there and like kind of like tuning my thinking brain out and like dulling my picture, like not being as so sharply looking at one thing, but like kind of like widening my perspective and like
Yeah.
looking more softly, almost like when you're like looking and you can kind of see your nose right here. It's because you're
Yeah.
soft looking. You're not trained way down at what you're looking at. So I'll just like stand there or like sit there Indian style and look softly and just like enjoy seeing people doing stuff, and try not to like judge or form an opinion, but just see like, the guy with his coffee talking to Maddie Sunday morning. And I already
Yeah.
know what that conversation is kind of like. And like here over in my peripheral, like these couple teammates, like they're pre-prep or whatever. And like part of me wants to go in and get in that conversation, but for a few minutes, I kind of want to just observe it. And occasionally just sitting there, like kind of zenned out, looking at everything, like big picture, like seeing not just one thing, but everything. I'll like catch like the hummingbird that like comes and hovers right here, and I'll
Yeah.
hear him, right? Because I'm not like so in my own head that I'm focused. I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't hear you talking to me there. No, like I hear everything, and I can't really tune specifically into any of it. It's not like I hear the detail of the Maddie Marshall conversation, but I can just kind of like hear its peripheral buzzing of all of it. And I just like try to like, that's what presence is, right? When you're like, you're able to take like the awareness away from the pain of your broken foot because you're like pushing your awareness out and just kind of like enjoying and observing all of it. And I like doing that. And when you're in the game, we already know you're hyper present when you play
Of
paintball.
course.
Because if you're thinking about like, did I file my taxes? You're probably going to get shot, right? Like you have to be there. So yeah, I really don't know if I should have just been more present in the anthem, or if I should have been like soaking up all of what it was that got there. Maybe I don't know if any of that affected if we were going to win that game, but like I guess I just don't know the answer of if there's a right or a wrong, or if they're both good and it's your choice.
I think that's it right there, right? Because like what you and I've watched so many pros go through this exact moment, and what you just experienced is, I would imagine if you're wearing a heart rate monitor when you're explaining that, you're going to watch your heart rate take a nosedive because it's a form of meditation where you're so open to what's going around you that it's almost slowing things down for you, which is enabling you to go step onto that moment more relaxed and present, right?
Yes.
And then you've got the flip side of it where people are so hyper focused on my job, pulling my gun up, dialing in that shot. Maybe that's raising their heart rate, and there's no right or wrong answer. People are going to handle that differently. But yeah, I love how you handle that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. The last thing I want to dive into here is you, like myself, have been doing a podcast. You've got the Paintball Passport. I think you've been going on for a year and a half now.
It was a year on January 2nd. So yeah,
Wow.
a little over a year.
So talk to me about that experience. Because starting this, it was kind of what we talked about earlier. Like, it's really scary to put yourself out there and like, man, is this going to fail? Is it going to succeed? I don't know. Should I do it or not? And you've had some beautiful conversations with some of the greatest people in our sports talking about their travel adventures. What have you learned about yourself, like being on the flip side of those conversations?
Yeah. So I've learned a lot about myself from being on the flip side of that, from starting this podcast. And ironically, it ties into the beginning of this podcast where a lot of these lessons were like, they couldn't have been better timing. Like I really felt like starting this podcast partially led me to get on Dynasty, because it taught me a few more lessons that I didn't know that I didn't know, like those are the really hard things to find. Like there are things that I know I don't know how to do, or I don't know how to speak Japanese, right? I know that. But in your adult life, there's still all these things that you don't know. And when you learn them through like a new form of growth, it's really nice because like sometimes you don't even realize you learned it until after the fact. And then you look back, and in hindsight, you're like, man, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have gotten a fucking Dynasty. That's really how it is, right? Like, not only did Dynasty give me like a chance to sit down and long form talk to and kind of get to know in the process guys that are on Dynasty, because a few of them were on before I got on the team. And maybe that led to it, because maybe they're like, oh, I like talking to that guy, and we actually connect with a nice flow. But also the podcast helped me confidently put myself into a place that in my own head, I don't think I'm needed, you know? And I guess to elaborate on that, it's not an imposter syndrome thing. It's not like oh, I'm not good enough. Like, why would they need me there? But it's like in life, I feel like there's a lot of times that you just assume like, oh, this guy's got that. You know, he's fucking sweet. Like that guy's the guy, right?
Mhm.
You just assume it. And so I'll lead back to the Dynasty after the podcast thing. So the podcast, I didn't really feel like I was being brave, putting myself out there doing it because I'm a pretty hyper extroverted guy. Like I'm very
Yeah, I see
outgoing.
that.
When I travel, I'll talk to anybody. That's how I like learn about my external world is just like there is no filter for me anymore. There's no ego. So I'm not like thinking about how do I approach this person or like do I have to look cool or
How do I
it's more
look?
like
Yeah.
I need to know something. I'm going right to this person and hey, can I talk to you? Like, can you tell me about your country or this and that? Or, you know, like I've gotten good at just like when you start overthinking it, then you don't do it. You think yourself out of it. So as soon as I want to do something or there's something I need to do, I just do it. And in that way, if I really want to do something like a podcast, it's not very hard for me to just do it. But the problem with the podcast was for like literally like since the beginning of COVID, when I did a few like Facebook Live versions of it, I kept thinking like I've traveled a bunch, but like, you know, Harrison's traveled more than me. Marcelo and Greenspan have traveled way more than me. Like there are these other like international travel guys that they have more credibility than me. And they're probably gonna, if anybody's gonna get that part of the lifestyle out there to the sport, they'll get more just because naturally more people are following them online and would instantly subscribe to them. So I want this to be done by the person that like to me, I don't care who wins the tournament, right? As long as we win. It doesn't need to be me out there doing the superstar move. I'm very much a team first person. So as long as it happens. So in my head, I wanted the podcast to happen, but I just thought eventually somebody else was going to see this obvious niche because people kept talking about building the story of people and making people fans of characters and like talking more about the uniqueness of the lifestyle. I'm like, oh, one of these top 10 dudes is going to do a travel podcast soon enough here. And then like month by month, year by
Yeah,
year,
never happened.
it happened. And eventually I remember being like, I'm not a content guy. Like I'm always present where I am. So I'm not really the guy that's like going Facebook live at the event and like, you know what I mean? I don't have time. I snap a few pictures. I make a post real quick on Instagram. Like day one, we won both games. But like I don't interact with other people. I never comment on other people's shit. Like I just don't like being on my phone. I'm not a phone guy. I'm not a social media guy. I'm not a content creator. No hating to any of them, but that's not me. I'm a wild animal that if not for paintball, I would live in the woods and I'd hunt salmon and I'd build my own shelter. So I don't like doing it, but the thought was just like, God damn it. I think I got to be the guy. I think I have to make this fucking podcast. And then I was like convincing myself, I'm like, well, you like talking to people, so that'll be easy. And you and your friends kind of share these stories to yourselves anyways. So why don't you just like secretly hit record and just like pretend like you're catching up over a beer? And I'm like, all right, I can do that. I think once a week I could do that. And then I'm like, oh my God, but I am completely tech illiterate. How am I going to like edit this? How do I upload a thing that I film to Spotify if I'm filming it? I don't know any of this shit.
Yeah.
And then when I like put it out there to the world that I wanted to do this thing, this guy Chase, who's a buddy of mine now, but I didn't even know him before. He lives in my local area. I had met him a time or two at the field, and he's just like, "Hey man, I'm pretty well off, and I don't really need it, but I've been thinking about like trying to give back to the sport, and I want to help someone, and I think you're the guy. I'd like to help you build your content. So do you like do your editing or like the hosting or all that shit for you?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing. Like, I'm not doing this to monetize it, so I can't offer you anything." And he's like, "No, dude, I just want to grow the sport in whatever way I can. And I'm not a talker, so I'll help you. And you just do the talking. I'll help you do it. So we're partners in this. Like he does half of the work, right? All I do is the easy part. I just talk to people." And then he's like, "Also, I have this and like a high quality camera to mount on your thing, and like a bunch of stuff that'll make this like better right off the back. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, holy crap. So I finally said yes. And the universe is like, thank you. You're the guy who fucking loves traveling and you finally stepped into the role.
Yeah.
Here's a couple like perks and accessories to like make that work better for you. Why did it take you so long? And so that was wonderful, right? It was nice to finally be like, all right, I guess I'm the guy for this. It wasn't waiting on anybody else. It was waiting, there was a need for it, I guess. I don't know how many people listen, but there's people that enjoy it. They message me and say it's sweet.
Totally.
And I just had to be the one to do it because I talk passionately about it because I'm obsessed with that part of the lifestyle.
Oh, wow. That's such a beautiful story. I didn't realize all that went into that. Wow.
Yeah. And sorry to be long-winded, but how
Please
that
don't.
Dynasty is that lesson, that what did this teach you by doing this podcast?
Yeah.
It was like it dawned on me, and luckily it kept happening at the right moments in the tournament where it's like, bro, you are on Dynasty, everybody else around you is elite, but you can't just keep assuming that like Yosh Rao is going to say the stoic thing that you're expecting him to say, or that Ryan Greenspan is going to pull the move to save this point. And sure, both those guys, all of the guys, they have those moments, but they don't consciously think in their head or have the bandwidth to do all the moments. You know what I mean? They're stepping up when needed, but they're not going like, oh fuck, what else should I do? Like, how can I do more? They expect other guys to like pick up the slack and like carry the weight with them. So like, I remember we're playing Ironman and we're up 1, and all we have to do is hold them off for a minute something, right? And we fuck up the point. It's some blame on all of us. And they get it in with 22 seconds left. And Ryan starts, bitching out Harry because Harry made the first mistake. Both are admittable, both are justifiable. We're back in the pits, and you can see guys aren't losing belief, but they're like frustrated about this, which has already happened. So it's in the past. And that is taking us out of the moment. And there's only 22 seconds left. So like if both teams decide to stale it out, this next moment isn't that important anyways. We can burn it out and probably just go to overtime and probably still win there too, right? But in my head, I was like, okay, if there's ever a chance that we can pull Dynasty magic, it would be by just being present again and believing in this moment right here and going out and winning this point before it's over. And I gave it like 2 seconds, which felt like eternity because you only have so much time, of like looking around and waiting, and no one said it. And so I was like, whoa, well, you had to step into that podcast role. Maybe this team, I know it's hard to believe, Joe, but maybe Dynasty actually needs this guy right now. And since nobody's being it, maybe different people can be it at different times, but you need to be like, not the leader, not the captain, but like maybe like the boosting guy, like the Oliver Lang or the Tyler Harmon. You need to be that right now or it's not going to work. So like people are bickering and arguing and whatever and complaining about, what we should have done to pull that point. All you had to do is this. And it's like, it's over. We lost. And I had to be like, everybody shut up. Take a breath. Come in here. I pulled everyone in and I was like, just take a couple breaths with me. We took a few breaths and I looked around. It was that same half a second in everyone's eyes, but in every one of them, it feels like a minute of looking down their eyes to me. I'm just like, next point. We're not going into overtime, guys. We're not playing overtime with this team. We are winning this game right here. 22 seconds is plenty of time for us, right? Give us the play. Let's go finish this right now. And it wasn't like people went, all right, but like you stay alive and be ready for it. No, everybody bought in where they were like, fuck it. Let's send it and let's go for it. Let's win this tournament or let's win this point right now and be done with the match. And then we clocked in and we all did it, right? And afterwards, I was more happy, not about, the big dive over it and
the
like
buzzer, yeah.
It wasn't so much to me about the moment of playing, because playing at a high level is like you expect yourself to be able to do that. It was more overcoming that moment. Like there was that really big peak that we had to climb in the pit where it could have went either way. It could have like went to stale. it could have kept spiraling and they win the point on us because it got worse, or it could turn around, get back on track, and we lock back in and be present again rather than thinking about the past. And now we go win, and we won it. And I was like, man, now I know the magic of this team, because like the mental fortitude for everybody to have that last point, which shift the momentum and have it come back to us, and then we go win it in a very like hard to win situation, is difficult. But holy shit, it was sweet that I got to be the guy to remind everybody that this is what we have to do.
Wow, what a power. Like, it's the power of a single moment right there, right? Like, that single moment totally could have changed either way. Dynasty's event. Like, if you would have, hey, let's just play this overtime. Maybe something goes wrong with that overtime point and you guys lose, and that changes the whole course of the rest of the weekend.
Yep.
So what a cool moment for you, like early on in your Dynasty chapter.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And if I could leave anybody a lesson on it, because it's kind of been almost the theme of this podcast, is life doesn't like play favorites, right? There are no favorites. But that also means that you can't just look at things as like, well, I'm only one in a million. Why me? What's the possibility, right? And no matter what it is, you can't keep thinking like that. Like when you come to a new team, it's the same thing as we said back at the beginning. You can't just like think about it as like, well, I guess I'll just stand in the shadows and like wait till somebody says it's my turn. Nobody's going to say it's your turn. Like you have to take it. And
why not me?
With everything that means, you have to, okay, I'm going to picture what everybody else is doing on this team. And I'm going to, in my head, I'm going to go do what I think it takes to outwork them all. And in my head, I have to know that I am doing that. And if I don't think it, because in my head, I'm pushing aside one thing that's like, that guy actually does this too. Well, guess what? Now you're lying to yourself. You need to now go do that thing. So there's that part of it as well. So there's all these different little things that to me like intertwine together with such good synergy. But so much of it always reminds me that it's like, if there is a position that you don't see anyone stepping into, or that you really, really want, you have to just believe that you can do it and step into it. And it doesn't even matter if it's Dynasty. Like my number one goal when I made the team was, I am going to be a starter by the first event. Like, I'm not going to be one of those guys that plays 5 points in my first season with them and goes, yeah, but it's such a star-studded cast. It is. It's a great roster. But, like, I've never let that stop me before. Like, I came into Infamous. That team has guys who are way more tenured than me, became a starter. On Aftermath, cutthroat. You make a single mistake towards the end of the day, even if you were having a pretty good day, probably not a starter, right? I played almost every point for that team. DMG, those were guys who won their way into pro without me. Like, but I knew I was going to be a starter. The time I didn't believe it was way back on Damage, and it was because, like, well, man, how am I going to take Jason Edwards' spot? Or why would I want to take his spot? That's a guy I want on the field. And it was so much about, like, well, team first. If I don't do it, like, be the best teammate I can, and this and that. And Oliver Lang told me this. Like, that's a good mentality to have, but there has to be a little bit of selfishness and chip on the shoulder where you're like, I'm going to do everything that it takes for the team. And if the team needs me to just be supporting cast in this particular moment, I will be the best I can at that. But that's not what I want to be. I want to be like a contributor. And it's not for my ego. It's not because I need to be the guy, but it's because you're supposed to be the star of your own movie. You're not supposed to make it to your final level and then just be on the bench. So, like, you have to decide very early and very like super focused and intentive that you are going to do whatever it takes to step into that role you see yourself as. And so I already knew it was going to be like really big shoes to fill to come into being like a 2 or a 3, like a quarterbacking role. Because even if you get starting time on a new upper end team, normally it's because you're like a Chris Shear situation, right? Like, he's a 1. So a team picks him up to be a weapon. And if he's out weaponing another guy, that's a good way to earn a starting time. But normally to become a starting role player is tougher. No diss to any ones out there, but it's because this team already has like a couple guys in the pocket that are really used to playing every point and communicating with each other. And that's kind of how the team plays. And the ones are just extended onto that. So when you get added to that, it's like not only is a key role player and quarterback being set, but you pretty quickly must have had to figure out how to gain chemistry, communication, and trust from those other guys. So, yeah, I once again, I knew the task ahead of me, but I never saw it as like, man, are you looking at this unrealistically, Joe? I just said, this is my goal. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do everything I can to do it. And like the playing and all of that and working out, that's the easy part. The harder part was like being a little bit more, not censored, but reserved and a little bit less out there my first few practices with Dynasty, and being more quiet and observant so I could see the way they all acted and interacted. And then I could like go to sleep at night kind of putting together like, okay, so this is this type of guy. So I'm gonna work with him more like this. And this guy prefers this type of feedback. Or like, like a Blake Yarber is like, he has a point, you want to stoke him. He's doing that too. I'll be like, fuck yeah, Blake.
Get in his face,
like, the quieter on that guy on that team, he doesn't want or need that. Like he doesn't need that, right? So like I really just like focus on that. And then by the time it was layout practice, it's like, okay, now I exactly know how to insert myself into every situation. And when these certain things aren't being said, I know that it's like, I'm the guy that says it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So other people out there listening, see yourself being that. It's more than imposter syndrome. It's more like, well, you trust yourself, right? You worked hard enough, right? Did you check all those boxes? If you didn't, sorry, back to start. You need to check some boxes. But if you have all of your ducks in a row and you've like done the inner work and like the outer hard work and all that stuff, well, when that moment comes, realize that like sometimes you're the fucking guy and you need to like be the one that steals the point or says the thing or, I don't know, any of those metaphors, right?
Yeah. Gosh, what a beautiful like bow on this podcast. I think we came full circle on it. So thanks for bringing this home beautifully there. I do, if you've seen any of my shows, I've ended all of my podcasts with like tying in the guests with a pretty cool way where I'll ask a guest a question without knowing who next week's guest is. And then you get to ask a question. And so I sat down with Nigel D'Souza recently, who will be the show before yours. And if you don't know Nigel, he's the film photographer on the pro field. So he's the guy out there like literally shooting film.
Me and him came from the same camp.
He's incredible.
Yeah, he was from the rhythm camp back in like 2006, 7, 8. So I've known Nigel for longer than I've known a lot of people. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy. So excited for you to see that one when it comes out. His question, though, for you, without knowing you were on the guest, which now is cool tie-in, he's a big movie buff. He wants to know what your top 3 favorite movies are.
Whew. Okay, disclaimer, because that episode wasn't out yet, I just listened to the Yosh Rao episode, and I thought his question was for me.
Nope.
So I was like kind of pre-prepared. I wanted to be authentic, but I was like, okay, I heard this. At least I know where I'm, what I'm getting into.
Yeah. You can answer that too if you want.
Well, I'll answer that real quick. We're not gonna get super into it. But his question was to put something out there to hold you accountable, which I think we talked about as well. It kind of
we did, yeah.
It now you're like, fuck, if I'm lazy, then it's embarrassing because I said I was gonna do it, and now I'm not a man of my word, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things I could talk about, but I mean, my number one goal is to win a professional paintball tournament. And it's been like that for a while, but like being on Dynasty, it's a year that I know I can do it. Like the possibility is there. This is the team that knows how to win. If there was anybody that you're going to win a tournament with, finally, it's the winning team. I've been in teams where I knew I'd get close. I believed I could win, but we were still trying to figure out how to win. Now I'm with a team that is winners, so I expect to win. So putting it out there, I will win a professional tournament this year. I will, because what that's going to do is hold me accountable to doing all the things that are necessary. You're not going to win if you don't check all those boxes. And last event, admittedly, we only half checked one of the boxes because we did everything right. We learned everything at a high level, but we didn't put in that extra muscle memory time that Paintball Fit surely did. They worked harder than us. So in the work hard box, if it's either you could check it or you can't, I guess we can't check it. I guess we didn't work hard enough. So I know that this season, every time a day is over and it feels a little early and no one's rushing me to leave, I'm going to do the extra work. And I've always been a person who tries to be first on the field, last off. But now more than ever, I have that thing that's still like burning into my memory about how shitty it felt when we lost that. Because after all the moments that were happening for us that seemed so special, and it's just like, oh my God, the universe is making every little thing go our way. I thought for sure and believed with every fiber of my being that I was going to win that tournament and finally get that win I've been craving for my entire life in US Pro Paintball. And when it didn't happen, I didn't immediately see these lessons, but later on, I was just like, okay, the stark lesson here that reality is giving me is like, you have to work harder than those bunch of young up and coming kids, like basically the new dynasty of today that are all best friends and play way more than anybody else. And if you don't beat them, they're just going to keep winning.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
So I will win a tournament this year, and I will do everything it takes to win that tournament.
I love it. When that happens, I'm going to clip this out and I'm going to post it as a reel like the next day after. It's going to be cool.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
As
Top
far
three.
as my question, top three. Okay. First off, Avatar. Not
Love
Airbender,
it.
but like Avatar, you know?
Yeah.
God, I love that fucking movie. It's so good. That movie is so metaphorical, like the life lessons in it. And like the lessons, like I think what he's like trying to tell you about the reality of our world and like how people just suck and you should want to be more in tune and in balance and homeostasis with nature and the rest of the planet rather than so separate from it and just taking from it. I just love everything about that movie. It is a masterpiece. It's visually stunning. It is weird to me that the CGI in that movie way back then is still better than anything today. It's strange. So I think that movie is just like how quality it is in its storytelling, in its cinematography, in the script, the plot, everything it's the best movie I can think of. The next two movies, man, this is tough. This is kind of cheating, but tied is the first three Fast and Furiouses, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this.
No, great choice.
I think they are great because if you rewatch them now, they're kind of, some parts are kind of bad. You know, it's kind of cheesy where you're like, oh, that's such a cringy line. But also, there's so many good one-liners in all three of those first movies, and anything after that sucks. Like the next several, like they become almost more like SEAL Team or like Avengers. You know, like they're saving the world. I really liked it when it was just like guys drifting cars,
street racing. Yeah.
And I quote those three movies, any one of them, almost every day. Like there's just things that happen, I quote them, and sometimes people catch them and I'm like, yeah. And other times it just goes over people's heads and I'm like, well, I waste way too much of my memory RAM space being able to recite all of those movies from beginning to end, but I love them. So yeah, it is what it is.
Great answer. Do you want to go with a third one or do we want to put those as just your 2 and 3?
No, I probably have a good third one. And also, here's another thing. The Fast and Furious movies, they are on TV at all times
Yeah.
every paintball event, no matter what. Like I don't even gotta like, maybe. Anytime I'm on a team, my thing is like when you're finally turning your brain off and you're in your room with your one roommate, or if you have 3 roommates, finally like, hey, let's just watch like a little bit of like 4 cable TV with commercials and all. I don't want to just sit on my laptop or whatever. I want us to like laugh about the cheesiness of some show. And I go, we're watching Fast and Furious Marathon. They go, what? How do you know it's on? Some people like Brustleback know it's on. And it's like, trust me, it's either on Spike or FX or MTV.
It's always on.
We're going to see one of them. And then sure enough, it's 10 minutes into one of them and we watch it and it's hysterical.
That's great.
Okay. This last one is going to be kind of obscure. I don't know if people will remember this, but I think in the 90s, kids' movies were really good. Like really good. Like you had those like Steven Spielberg movies where now looking back, like some of them are almost kind of like scary in some parts.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You know, like Brave Little Toaster or something like that. Now kids' movies suck. But back then, movies were like powerful, you know?
Yeah.
And dude, I think a lot of people know about Land Before Time, but there was this other movie from like 5 or 6 years before. I think it was like 88 called We're Back, a dinosaur movie. Do you remember this?
I remember a dinosaur movie. I don't remember the name of it, but maybe that's what I'm thinking about then. Wow.
The beginning of it is like, you know, the dinosaurs are more realistic. They're still animated, but they look meaner. And then, like, the spaceship comes down and gives them like the brain food, and they become like more like poppy and bubbly and like friendly.
Yeah.
They're not just trying to eat each other, but they grow consciousness. Instead of just being a thing that eats, sleeps, and is a killing machine, the T-Rex becomes like socially aware and realizes like some of these other animals are like part of his ecosystem and he should be friendly with them. And if you can't fully remember that movie, rewatch it now as an adult, because
I'm gonna go watch it this weekend.
It's a beautiful movie, and also it is so good for kids nowadays. Like if I had a kid, like my friends Josh and Tim, they have kids, and when it's finally my time to like babysit them for a day, I'm watching that and some of those like like Fern Gully and Fievel Goes to America and like that era of movie, because they're really good for the kid in some of the lessons they have. That like there's some scary stuff, like Life is Tough, like all of them have like a scary moment that you're like, geez, this is a little rough for like a 3-4-year-old kid. To me, the kids should see that. It shouldn't all be like bouncy sunflower sunshine, because if as a child you're never exposed to the scary shit, then when you're like 10 or teenage or adult and scary shit starts happening, it's like you're just going to be like the soft little guy that like shuts down and doesn't deal with it. And it's the same thing with adults, right? It's like if you never put yourself into challenges, then when really tough things happen in your life, you're just not used to it, because you haven't built up like a resistance to sometimes shit is bad, sometimes shit doesn't go my way. And like all of this is a reason that like I'm okay that I lived in Buffalo and did some bad shit to go pro, or had some tough times or some struggles or some like really poverty moments in life, because now when anything happens to me, it's like I'm completely unfazable. And so I know this was a question about a movie, but if anybody could watch these movies that I recommended in my 3rd movie category, and if you have kids, realize that you should allow them to like go through struggles. And if you have not been through hard struggles yourself, purposely put yourself through some. Like go camping in the woods without anything and try to make it 3 days, or shut your bank account off for a week and go, I'm going to get through this week with $20 for food. You know, I promise you can do it. And halfway through it, you'll probably be like, why am I doing this? I don't have to do this. But that's the soft part of your mind that finds a, what do you call it? Like an escape route or like a safety net. And you need to learn how to pretend like you don't have those until you're good enough that you're not pretending anymore. Because sometimes you don't have it. And this is how you reach pro. This is how you reach your dream life. This is how you hit the upper echelons of anything, is by like putting yourself into bad situations or challenges or tough things or really testing your limits unless you're already in that. But if you're not, I need to go do this, because that's how you get there.
Yeah, it's adversity is what you're going through and what you learned through going through anything like that. So, yeah, no, this is a beautiful answer. I really appreciate you not just rattling off 3 movies and being done with it. So it's nice to know the why behind all of it.
Oh yeah.
So now the pressure's off. You get to ask my next guest a question without knowing who it is.
Oh man, awesome. So I had a few ideas brainstormed, but I guess, I don't know, on the theme of this episode, I'll reiterate the thought and then ask the question with it. So in this life, if everything that is in your reality is only your reality because you are perceiving it, you're there as like the witness or the observer, and it's being processed in your mind of like, oh, I'm about to eat this apple, or I am outside in this park. If everything is only processed by your mind, and then the question comes, what is the difference between what is processed by your mind already inside of it, like what you think about your life or what you dream could happen or what you picture for you, and then the different outside version of it, the reality that you're looking at or perceiving? That's not the question. But if there is that question of like, what is the difference of it, or is there really a difference? If there is no difference, then why do you not already live the life that you want to live?
Wow. Gosh, that's such a good question.
And to elaborate, I think it's important for the person to answer this very honestly and transparently, because unfortunately, you're probably going to get another pro paintballer or something like that. I don't know who it is. And if you ask me that, I'd be like, well, I'm living the life I want to live. I'm on Dynasty, and there's this bunch of other things that are going on right now that I won't get into that are very good synergy with my life, where it's like, I just feel like, holy shit, I'm like the fucking star of my own movie finally that I wanted to be. It's not like a dollar store version movie that I happen to be the star of. This is like the real movie I wanted to star in, right?
Yeah.
So whoever this person is, if you have some other dream, like you're like, well, I'm loving it. My life is great right now. I love it. But like my real dream is this. Answer yourself why you're not already living that dream. Because if the answer is actually I'm doing everything I possibly can, then hey, I know it's not going to happen overnight. You might get there in a year or 5 years or whatever. But if this person thinks about it honestly and like holding themselves accountable, and they go, the answer will come right up to this front of their mind, because I know it does for me. And they'll be like,
Totally.
honestly, it's because I'm lazy in blank category. I keep saying I'm going to do that, and that would help me. I do all the other things, but I just don't do that part. It's like, well, go do it already, because you're literally the only person your own way. Like you're 90% there, and you're just like too lazy or too busy or don't have enough money to get that last part done. You're just making an excuse for yourself. And guess what? The only thing that excuse is doing is holding up you from the rest of your life. Like nobody else is affected, and they don't know. Like you can lie to them if you want, but you can't keep lying to yourself, you know?
What a beautiful question. Oh man, I'll tell you off air who we're still working out the scheduling, but like if it works out, this is going to be such an incredible question for that person.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Joe, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I appreciate you taking time out of the day to jump on the podcast. It's been an honor getting to know you on a deeper level, and you're quickly becoming one of my favorite pros in the league. It's so cool to watch you grow, man.
Thank you. Well, you are easily becoming one of my favorite content creators, but I don't like to put people in a box. I like to see myself as more than a pro paintballer now.
Oh, 100. I see. That's what I'm saying. Like I see you, like I knew you as a paintball player, but now I see you as like Joe, the person. And like, I respect you on a whole different level now.
I appreciate that. And I knew you didn't mean something else by it, but I used to only see myself as my pro identity, and I've learned to find other balance. And I realized if I lost both my legs tomorrow, I got to now know that I'm something else other than just this one thing I've attached myself to.
Yeah.
And that's why you should also try to learn how to be not so attached to outcomes or destination or whatever else. But what I more meant was, you're the man for more than being a content creator. It's, I don't know what high school you went to or what you did growing up, but I know you now, Shelly. Like I know the type of guy you are. And I think you know me a little bit more. And yeah, you're awesome. And we are more than just our titles or our professions. And we're even more than our passions, So I appreciate you. And I thank you for coming on or inviting me to come on. And I also, I feel out of responsibility. I wanted to leave people with like a disclaimer, right? Like,
Sure.
I don't wish a difficult life on anybody. I hope that people can get to whatever their dream is without having to live out of their car or starve for a year or whatever that is, right? I don't wish this on anybody. I hope that people can find easier, smoother, more fluid pathways, even though they will still be windy and unpredictable, but to get to where you're going, right? When I was saying things before on what I have done or what I would do to get there, that's just my own story. And I'm not telling you like you have to do this too, like this bad thing. And also I would never condone, even to get to your dream, killing or hurting someone. And I've never once sold something that would hurt someone. I can honestly say that. I've never went so low in my integrity, like a crack dealer. Like they'll watch their own community disintegrate so they can get that Lamborghini. And I've never went to that point in my life. But everything else beyond that, once again, I'm not saying out there that you should put yourself through poverty or you should be a drug dealer, but like when there's excuses to get to your dream, you got to ask yourself, like, what are you willing to do? Yeah. And so my disclaimer is like, don't hurt people. Don't do anything that's like horrific or like morally bad, but like ask yourself that hard question on like, make it simple. Are you willing to die before you just give up and like imprison yourself in a life of mundane, repetitive mediocrity? Are you willing to die to live your dream? And stop making excuses.
Beautiful. That's a great way to end the show. Awesome. Well, everybody else that's tuning in, on Facebook and on Facebook, on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.